Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. This is the Curriculum and Instruction Committee of February 23rd. We're going to start first with me just welcoming all of you and asking you in a moment to introduce yourselves so that everybody knows who everybody is. But before that, I wanted to just take an opportunity to make a few comments about the fact that as we come to the end of February, we're coming to the end of Black History Month, but I hope that what this has done is aroused your interest and not ended it. I'm always disturbed by some efforts to talk about Dr. Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, but only using the first half of it instead of all of it. So the second half's really quite a lot more interesting than even the first half, but we don't teach the second half. I want to change that at some point. And also, I don't think we really let Americans of all races know the extraordinary contribution to the wealth of this nation that was caused by all of those years of slavery. When you don't have to pay anybody who works for you, you end up with capital gain. And when you end up with capital, you become a different nation than a nation that is capital poor. And that capital in this first century of our nation was largely due to the fact that there were literally millions of people not working for any wages. So that made this a rich nation, and we don't give enough credit to the fact that that money was stolen out of the labor of some people so that other people could prosper. We got more to do in Black history. So I'd like to remind you that materials and agendas from our meetings, along with recordings of past meetings, are available online at achieve.lausd.net/CIC. And if you can't remember CIC, it's Curriculum Instruction Committee, so CIC. You can find all our topics and all of our broadcasts so that if there was something that interested you from less time for about mathematics, for example, and you didn't see it and you weren't here, it's online, you can get it all. And I want to say that the last meeting was dubbed in Spanish thanks to Vernell Skaggs and our Division of Instruction for helping to make our meetings more accessible to a wider audience. I'm very grateful. Today, the title of our presentation is Reading Programs for At-Promise Students. And I want to remind you that we used to call these students at risk, but you know, that was sort of negative sounding. At promise is much more accurate. These students we have not met the promise that we need to make to them, and they are at promise. We will learn about efforts at both elementary and secondary schools to help struggling readers develop the skills that they will need for a lifetime. As a former high school social studies teacher myself, I can tell you I saw the impact of when students could not read the textbook and what that meant to their education and what that meant to what I had to do as a teacher to try to make it clear that we could still learn even though you weren't able to read the text. We will hear today from district leaders in literacy as well as from teachers and principals who are here to share with us what's working at their schools. Shortly, we'll welcome staff from two elementaries, Hamasaki and Kittredge Elementaries, and two secondary schools, Young Oak Kim and Linda Marquez Libra Academies. So before we do that, I want to make sure everybody knows who's here. So I'm going to ask our folks that are committee members to introduce themselves, and I'll start first with Tanya Ortiz Franklin, who's a board member with us online.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am home for childcare, and I represent Board District 7, which is South LA through the Harbor area. Glad to be a part of the Curriculum and Instruction Committee. Thanks, Ms. Goldberg.
And I believe Dr. McKenna is going to join us, but he is not here yet, so we'll have him introduce himself when he comes in. We also have Cecily Felton-Hammond.
Hi, my name is Cecily, and I have a graduating fifth grader from Mitchell Torena Elementary. He's headed off to Irving Middle School next year, and a fourth grader, and they're both in the dual language program.
And Carmen Tecuane, wait, did I say that right? No, is she here? Oh, here's Dr. McKenna. We'll get him in just a moment. I don't think Carmen's here.
We may begin, that's right.
Okay. We have Brenda Malik, I think. No Brenda Malik. Okay. Who am I missing? No, I'm missing you. Go ahead. Sorry about that.
My name is Yatina McCallie Soto, and I'm a teacher at Franklin. I currently teach English, 9th, 11th, and 12th grade.
Okay, and now we have Dr. McKenna, who as soon as he gets himself settled, will introduce himself. Who else did you say?
Yes, my apologies. Every elevator was
Okay,
packed.
thank you.
Coming from above the 24th floor, I had to let 4 pass before I could get on. So I apologize for being late. Must be a getaway time. I'm the board member for Board District 1. I'm a member of this committee. Thank you all for being here.
And Dr. Lourdes Ramirez Ortiz?
Hi, I'm Lourdes Ramirez Ortiz. I'm one of the administrators of instruction in Region East.
Okay, did I leave anybody else out besides our Chief Academic Officer? Nobody else? Okay, now I'll ask you to introduce yourself and to take over the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Francis Baez, Chief Academic Officer here in LA Unified. It's a pleasure to be here with everybody. Good afternoon, Board President Goldberg and Curriculum and Instruction Committee. It's a pleasure to be here to present the current tiered approach to address teaching and learning and English language arts in all of our schools. With our new strategic plan and the opportunity to align resources to literacy, numeracy, graduation, and social emotional learning goals, we are identifying new approaches to scale up throughout the district. Our goal is coherence, which means that all schools implement the same effective practices in every single classroom and every single school. Today, you will hear the strategies we are using for Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, and then you will hear from the school principals about the programs they are implementing. Now, you will learn more about what Tier 1, 2, and 3 means. And one thing I do want to mention is that we use the adopted curriculum in all of our classrooms. We also add and augment and supplement the instruction so that our students have access to the standards by grade level. So I want to make sure that everyone who is viewing this meeting knows and understands that we are using the adopted curriculum in all of our schools, but we supplement that with materials and strategies to help all of our learners access standards. Lastly, there's much more that we need to do to address the students who are well below benchmark and below benchmark in reading. I would like to thank the Division of Instruction team, Pedro Garcia, Carlin Powell, Brenda Pensamiento, Mylene Kipe, and all of the members who have planned this meeting and who are dedicated to ensuring that we provide our students the best education and for supporting our principals and our teachers across our system. I would also like to thank Principals Noriega, Jimenez, Lauer, and Gurkal, who will share the multi-tiered systems of support they have in place to address unfinished learning for our at-promise students. So the first presenter will be Ms. Carlin Powell, who will share the strategies that we're employing in elementary literacy. So our presentation will be from elementary, and then our secondary, and then we'll invite our school principals. Welcome, Carlin Powell, Administrator of Instruction for Elementary.
Thank you, Ms. Baez. Good afternoon, or good evening, Board President Goldberg, Board Member McKenna, and committee members. It is a pleasure to be here today to talk to you about our support for at-promise readers. I remember this, our clicker was a little special last time, so let me get it ready. All right, so I wanted to start the presentation about supporting struggling readers at the elementary level with an overview, a timeline of how we've been rolling out supports that really lean into the science of reading, like that evidence-based way of supporting our struggling readers. So you can see that all the way back in 2014, we started with an initiative called the Early Language and Literacy Program that we brought to all of our elementary schools over a few years. And the goal was really to lean into supplemental materials and to help teachers understand the importance of using their DIBELS data to provide small group instruction. We help them indicate protected time for small group instruction, common practices, and then using evidence-based supplemental resources like the 95% group, phonics materials and the Hagerty phonological awareness materials. And then you can see that in 2017, our board released a resolution aimed at supporting students with dyslexia, identifying them and supporting them. And we know that reading challenges are one of the characteristics of students with dyslexia. So it really, complemented our work and spearheaded us going deeper into the science of reading as an approach for the district. You can also see in 2019, our kindergarten readiness program was launched. They provide early literacy and numeracy support. And then beginning in 2020 and 21, we really got into training around the Orton-Gillingham approach, learning essentials for teachers of reading and spelling. We launched a micro-credential, lots of support for all classroom teachers, and then for those specializing in intervention. I'm gonna get this. Let's see. Go on, it's not helping me, but I'll go on. I'll start and then we'll get the slides together. So Ms. Baez talked about tiers of support. Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. Tier 1 is really that instruction that all students get as a part of their regular classroom instruction provided by the classroom teacher. It can consist of, whole group lessons. It can consist of small group lessons, but it's really the core instruction. It's important for us to, when we talk about supports for at-risk readers, we always start with Tier 1 because good first instruction, or some people call it good best instruction, that is what can reach the majority of our students. And then our other tiers of support, we would hope that our good first instruction ensures that everybody is on grade level, and then our other tiers of support are supporting fewer and fewer students. So for Tier 1 instruction, we are teaching our teachers how to implement the science of reading. Part of that is the language essentials for teachers of reading and spelling. We want them to understand how reading develops in the brain, what type of challenges students can have, and how they can use diagnostic assessment data to really tailor instruction to best support students in moving on. Tier 1 instruction, as I mentioned, involves highly rated core curriculum as well as small group instruction. And I'll start going along a little bit faster. Thank you. All right, just want you to know, highlighting from our work in letters with the science of reading, we know that we support teachers in building students' word recognition skills and their language comprehension, and that is what makes up reading comprehension. So we're working on all of those areas simultaneously. One of the trainings I mentioned that we are investing in for many teachers in the district is around their foundational literacy instruction. That's training on using the Orton-Gillingham approach. It's an approach for structured literacy instruction, and it is systematic, cumulative. It involves multisensory practice, which we know reaches so many students. And then, of course, the learning is sequential. So good Tier 1 instruction. The cornerstone is a high-quality core reading program, but then we also provide Tier 2 and Tier 3 supports. You all have probably heard about the Primary Promise Initiative, where we have those literacy interventionists. They work with small groups of students, providing daily small group instruction. That's a second scoop over and above what the children get in their regular classroom instruction from the teacher. We recently launched a program with upper grade teachers at elementary school, so 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teachers. We provided them with an evidence-based intervention program and are supporting them in doing that daily consistent small group instruction. We find that our upper grade teachers really need to learn how to teach foundational skills to students who are struggling readers at the upper grades. And then with our med department, our multilingual, education department. They have supports for our PLTELs, our potential long-term English learners, and then in collaborating with the Division of Special Education, there are also literacy supports for students in special education. So I mentioned the early language and literacy plan, the academies or the small group instruction done by the classroom teachers. The primary promise interventionists provide that second scoop of small group instruction. In the upper grades, those schools participating in the Reading Horizons program are providing that small group instruction daily to students. The tutoring initiative also complements the support in literacy. So we have tutoring vendors providing literacy support. We also have IDEX centers who I want to say we have leveraged to bring their high-quality training to other teachers in the district. They actually co-create the Orton Gillingham training. They co-facilitate and present. That's transferring the practice of the IDEX centers to our teachers in general education. I mentioned the PL-TELs and their support. You know, our English learners receive both designated and integrated instruction to build their path towards biliteracy and reclassification. So that's just a little overview of the programs for elementary school. When the voices in the field take over, you're going to hear from the principals of how that's looking. I want to turn it over to Pedro Garcia, Senior Executive Director.
Good evening, esteemed board members, President Goldberg, and staff. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon or evening and to provide this update around secondary literacy and our efforts around Tier 1, 2, and 3. I just want to start off with, in secondary level, particularly middle school and high school, we do start off with a core instructional program. Again, Ms. Baez referenced our core curriculum, our adopted curriculums. In middle school, we have 3 selections for textbook adoption. And also in high school, we have 4 main core adoptions that we've used. And as we trend forward and as we move forward and adopt new cycles for adoption, we will certainly revisit the appropriateness, the level of supports that are embedded in these core adoptions, that they're culturally relevant, and that they speak to the needs of our students in LAUSD. So I just wanted to start with that critical component, as our core curriculum has to meet the needs of our diverse learners, their needs, and again, be appropriate culturally to meet the needs of our community. So wanted to start off with that, that overview. And if I can make sure I get the slide deck back. Thank you. So in Tier 2 and Tier 3, when we assess core instruction and the outcomes, as we transition into Tier 2 and 3, we use our assessments that are administered district-wide. We make decisions as to whether supports are needed for Tier 2 and Tier 3. And if you look at these examples here, for Tier 2 and 3 literacy support in the secondary level, we offer programs like Read 180, which focus on having students engage in independent learning activities, also small group instruction where appropriate. And again, using middle school as an example where we have this program implemented, it also allows for a blended learning, which means that students are supported by teachers in the classroom who receive these types of support. Digital independent learning supports. These are supports that we offer our students, like Mayan is one example, Accelerated Reader is another example. These are supports, iExcel, sorry, one more I wanted to mention. These are supports that are appropriate for personalized learning. For example, if a student takes a reading assessment, we can identify the gaps in their literacy proficiency, and we can provide, through these examples of digital independent supports, how they have a personalized approach to meet the gaps, to be more proficient in their linguistic skills. So that's how those examples are used. And then we also, as my colleague Ms. Powell mentioned, we have several digital resources. Newsela is one resource that we use district-wide, and it's accessible to our students, accessible through Schoology, and that is another component that we would encourage our students to use for a set amount of times, because it wouldn't benefit them as much, for example, if they were simply to log on every other week. We want it structured, 20 minutes a day, 3 times a week, to maximize their learning and to make sure that they're progressing forward with their literacy skills. Orton Gillingham and Letters, Cal Reads are other examples. Ms. Powell mentioned those. there's been an effort to get more of our teachers trained in these offerings of professional development. For example, in Orton-Gillingham, we do have, I believe, 250 teachers now trained, with more to come. We're providing that professional development. And in Letters, we do have fewer amount of secondary teachers. I want to be very clear. Secondary has fewer letters, but we do have additional teachers at the elementary level who have been trained in the Letters program. And finally, Cal Reads is a partnership. I know that there are other districts in the state that are using this approach to reading and support. Particularly, in LAUSD, we're scaling up, and we'll be partnering with our colleagues from the Division of Special Ed to make sure we're looking at the identified needs of our special needs students when it comes to literacy. Addressing dyslexia is another component about supporting literacy efforts for the secondary student. And also want to look at, again, this was mentioned, for middle school, we do have IDEC. The IDEC program is a collaboration, again, with the Division of Special Ed. We have, I believe, 14 current programs for IDEC at the middle school level, with, I believe, 12 for elementary. So this is just additional supports that we use for the intense support of Tier 2 and Tier 3. Again, using diagnostic data, progress monitoring is also a big component of making sure our students are progressing toward literacy and being proficient. High-dose tutoring. Ms. Powell mentioned also the high-dose tutoring effort that has launched in our district. Although we know we want more students to be engaged in high-dose tutoring, we've put in a lot of effort and communication to make sure students, staff, community members are aware of the resource available through high dose. High dose tutoring is more effective when done multiple times, for example, throughout a week, over a fixed set of time. For example, 2 to 3 times a week, an hour or an hour and a half of tutoring for 8 weeks will provide more positive results simply than randomized tutoring sessions. Although we do have other forms of tutoring, we want to focus our support here at Tier 3 because, as we may know, our 100 schools, our priority schools, are being the first set of schools to have this resource available to them. And we are working with our partners, working with vendors, working with our schools in more particular to make sure the kids are being registered for these services and also that they're receiving the supports necessary. Small group instruction is another component I want to spend some time on. Small group instruction, again, evident in tutoring after school, evident in acceleration days that we just had, and also this is a piece where we encourage our students to benefit from small group instruction services, not just at the elementary level, but it makes a difference with our secondary students as well. And ideally, we want to make sure they have this access 3 to 5 times per week. I mentioned the Read 180 program. Again, these are primarily done, offered in middle school, where the middle school has a schedule that allows for a double block of time to provide this additional instruction for reading. And again, looking at the example of IDEC, I know we've discussed these intense supports for students with disabilities to make sure they are getting very targeted and intense levels of support through these centers as well. I kind of jumped ahead and gave the examples, I apologize, but you do have them in your deck. Going forward, I want to touch upon this slide in particular. Now, given that we're having a real deep dive into our analysis of where we stand with our outcomes and our alignment with our district goals, we want to make sure that we have a coherent approach. If there are gaps in our reading outcomes for students, where do we need to intervene and how are we more efficient with time and resources? I can tell you as a former reading teacher, it's critical that students are reading and being assessed to progress monitor at the earliest age possible. As a middle school teacher, I would often receive students that for whatever reason had gaps in the reading. They need the same type of supports, done in a respectful way, not to make them feel that they cannot achieve, but how do they then become more proficient readers while accessing content that's at their grade level? How do you do that? That's precisely why these trainings are important. As we move forward, the district, and I know through Ms. Baez's leadership, we intend to address this through a more coherent approach with professional development, with our regions, ensuring that we are taking on a set of strategies and implementing them across our district so that we can get feedback and we can provide additional supports to new teachers, veteran teachers, and everywhere in between to make sure students are getting the best instruction possible, okay? So moving forward and throughout the summer, I'll wrap it up by saying that in our summer PD that we're planning now, we intend to provide in-person professional development for the 100 priority school teachers to make sure that they have the supports needed. So I just wanted to make sure that, as you see here, there will be 21 schools who receive this support, and then 13 high schools, again, that'll receive support to make sure the reading apprenticeship approach that we'll take on speaks to literacy across all content areas, as literacy is everyone's responsibility. We know that. Okay, at this point, thank you. I'm going to turn it back over to my colleague, Carlin Powell, to introduce our first principal. Thank you for your time.
Pardon me, please. When do we get to make inquiry?
We could stop here and ask questions of these two before we hear from them. Would you like to do it that way?
I would like to. I don't know
Absolutely,
if
go right
anybody-
ahead.
I don't want to have to wait.
You don't have to wait.
And I know how effective both of these people are. I've been involved with one in particular more than others. How to ask this? When you make presentations, you're presenting to the board and the community and the public, what are your greatest challenges right now? What are the things? I'll preface it by saying, I think if I were in your position, I would have some challenges. One is, to what extent do the kids, the students who need it the most, participate in the after-school programs, or do they not? Secondly, what type of parent support do you get? Is it willingly? Is it frequently? How do you get the parents to participate in their own students', shall we say, emancipation from being a non or poor reader? Where is it done? When is it done? I know that's a challenge because we always have the problem of parent participation. Although, you know, we hear from them when they complain, and I mean this generically, about what we're not doing as a district. But I do know we have the problem of parents being non-participatory and maybe not knowledgeable about it. And one final thing, when I heard Dr. Powell say, what did she say? We have the upper grade level teachers still need how to learn how to teach struggling readers. Help me with all of that. How do you overcome that after you make your presentation about what your aspirations are, but the outcomes are going to be hindered by what else is not happening? Meaning well may not be sufficient to say, how do you drag the rest of the community in to the participation of their own emancipation?
Dr. McKenna, thank you for the question. Great question, and I will say this, that just today and yesterday, we talked to some of our principals about the same challenges that you're bringing up now. And one of the things that we've heard, and I've heard others say before, to your point, is to talk to the student about the reality of where they currently stand. It's not just the grade, it's not just an award, it's not just an incentive to come to an after-school program, but to really show them where they are in comparison to where they should be at grade level and what it means for their trajectory. But having an honest conversation about their grades, their assessment results, and I've heard colleagues from the field say that that has been one of the effective ways in terms of engaging the student. This is really where you are in terms of the data. What is it saying? And second part of that is, as they take these assessments, it's also critical that we say, well, what does this mean? How do you connect to why we're assessing your abilities in reading? We want to show you at the same time encouraging them to say, you know what? I actually think that you can do a great job on this assessment if you focus and put your mind to it and show us what you can really do so we can intervene. That's two examples with the students that I've heard, and I actually believe that that can be done. I've done the same thing in my own classroom. With parents, part of that conversation also, as we engage them and bring them in, explain to them what these numbers and the data really mean. What do the strategies mean? What do they look like? How do we showcase it and evidence it? How, when they walk our classrooms at our schools, can they make the connections to what quality instruction really looks like and how it benefits their child? These are some ways, and I know there are more, but I want to try to get to your question and the responses. I think it takes all of us to message constantly about where they stand when it comes to their proficiency about being a reader, and what it means to them.
These questions, these conversations with students, are they held in groups, like-minded groups, like-level groups, or are they held individually? How is that done, physically done, and in what time of day, and who makes that presentation?
Again, great question, and I know that the teachers often will conference with them, their counselors when they're doing or conducting their individual graduation plans, meet with them, sometimes independently in a small one-on-one in the office, or if they have some similar challenges with a group of students, not too big, very manageable, I think, in terms of a small group, they can speak to a small group of kids, say from a particular class, if appropriate. But if it needs a one-on-one conversation, that happens too. We've heard it done in both ways, and through much larger convenings or assemblies, but I think the more appropriate approach would be either one-on-one with the support of a teacher or a counselor, or in a small group with some like-minded intention or some strategies that can benefit a small group.
I'll just build on what Mr. Garcia said. So definitely primary promise teachers, classroom teachers can review the data with students, particularly a small group as they talk about the focus of the lesson, why we're learning, why we're practicing this in this small group. And a part of all the programs are helping the students also to have personal goals, right? I'm here now and I want to grow this more. I want to read this many more words. So having those conversations with students. In terms of are we reaching the students that most need support in after-school programs, I would say that we are expanding our outreach. We are reaching more and more students. We may not be reaching all of them, but we are doing our very, very best to reach more and more of them. But it also brings me back to the idea of Tier 1. So the after-school part, the Saturday part, that should be the extra scoop. We need to support the students adequately during the classroom, during the Tier 1 instruction, and that's why it's so important that we train our teachers, right? We want them to know. I think I might have heard you say at a board meeting that you wouldn't want your doctor to not have the most current training, right? We want our teachers to have the most current training, to understand the current research on what it takes to help students become proficient readers and what it takes when you're a struggling reader. That's the professional development that we are rolling out to teachers, be it the LETRS professional development that talks about all those strands of reading and how the brain learns to read and how you overcome challenges, or be it the Orton-Gillingham PD. So we're building up the ability of teachers to teach, and it's important that we reach the upper grade teachers. So we're including upper grade. You heard LETRS and Orton-Gillingham mentioned at the secondary level. Sometimes they are not, familiar with the importance of the foundational skills, the morphology, right, and how these things progress and how to go back and fill those holes. So we're bringing that training to them as a part of the why. And I think you might hear some of the voices in the field talk about engaging in that learning with their staff and how that's making a difference in them understanding the importance of either small group instruction or that high quality Tier 1 instruction. And then I also know that between the primary promise teachers and the school sites that you'll hear today, they are making a concerted effort to do that parent outreach, to provide those parent workshops, that training, so that families also understand the importance of literacy, how it develops, and what they can do at home to support students.
I appreciate that. I don't want to dominate this, but I'm so impassioned about all of this. I do know how terrible it is for children not to be able to read, and read for comprehension, and read for pleasure, and read because they want to read, not because they have to read or forced to read. And the human element in it is that people in general, but reality, who don't do well don't try harder to do better. they have to be persuaded. They have to be sometimes influenced beyond their wishes to be influenced, even aggravated sometimes about what their circumstances are and how desperate it is if you don't cross this hurdle. And as you get older and get into the upper grades, it makes it harder and harder for the secondary teachers who may not be trained at all, other than in specific classrooms to deal with a non-reader. And when I say a non-reader, I don't mean somebody who just can't point to words and recite them, but can't read for content, can't read for understanding, can't read for comprehension, and be able to write back and that kind of. If you can't read, you can't write. A lot of people can read and can't write. They think they can read, but they really can't because they don't know they have the vocabulary. And when they get past a certain age, I don't know what that age is, but I do know if they get past high school, we can't help them. They're gone. If we don't stop it and correct it, I don't know who helps them later on in life. I don't think they enroll in a community college, who helps them with their non-reading skills. This is the last time they're going to get it. It seems like a long time. I have 12 years to learn this. I don't think the little children say that. They don't know what 12 years means. They think that's forever. But it's not. It happens with the speed of a nightmare. And when they wake up, they're in a nightmare. I'm really concerned about how we measure progress. And when you say these are the children that need help, we have all these resources, all these strategies, and then when it comes to what progress did they make and how did we measure that? This child who was under, have they reached grade level? Are they over? Which ones have done that? Where has that been done? That kind of measurement data is very helpful because I know enthusiasm is not lacking on the part of staff. Participation on the part of those that need it the most sometimes is not there.
Hopefully, on the issue of implementation, that's why we have the 4 schools here. So
I'm ready to give
leave
it up
the
now.
implementation questions, if you will, till then, and do the general, larger questions, which you started with, if you would.
I will. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay, I think I saw Board Member Ortiz Franklin had some questions or comments. Go right ahead.
Thanks, Ms. Goldberg. Building on Dr. McKenna's question about measuring progress, I'm sort of surprised we don't have any student data on the slides, and was just curious if the team had any data they wanted to present as to how our students are doing with these various approaches, or if that might be a follow-up task, that's okay too, but wanted to give some space to share, how is all of this actually impacting our kids?
I would say we can bring more specific data as a follow-up task, but I do know that the schools, when they talk about implementation, they will talk about their data and how implementing these approaches and practices is really impacting the student outcomes.
And we're going to get some middle of year data at the full board sometime soon, right, Ms. Baez?
That's correct. That's something I wanted to add, that at the time of submitting these materials, we didn't have all of the middle of the year data, so I apologize for not having that here today, but we will provide that, and in a general meeting, we'll be able to provide that update as well. Schools do have that data, so I'm sure that they will be able to mention a little bit about it, so you should be getting it soon.
Great, thanks so much.
Anybody else from the committee have questions or comments? I just have one. My problem is that here's what I'm seeing. I've been looking at a lot of schools now. If this is the standard, we have a lot of kids that are this far from standard, and I see us making great progress with them. I really do. Everywhere I go, I see that thing. Then we've got kids over here, very far from standard. I don't see any movement. I mean, I really don't see any movement. As I talk to each school, they tell me they had 81 of those before and they have 78 now. Well, okay, 3 they moved, but 78 are still way far from the standard. Do we have a different set of plans for those kids who are way far from standard? Or are we doing pretty much the same thing? And the reason I ask that is on your slide about Tier 3 support secondary, you talk about reading 180 universal. My experience as a high school teacher that worked on reading it for years was that reading a 180 was not a bad program if you were closer to the top. Didn't do much for these kids. Didn't seem to do much for these kids. And same thing with several of these things that you're doing, which work really well, but I don't see us being able to move this group down here. And that's the group I'm personally most worried about, because if they leave us, as Dr. McKenna was saying, nobody else is going to work on their reading. So do we have a program based on looking at differentiating, particularly at secondary, but also in grades 4, 5, and 6, for those kids who are really far from standard as opposed to making good progress with the ones that are closer? We're getting them there.
We do, Ms. Goldberg, and what I'd like to add, if I may, is that in addition to the targeted focus that we want to provide our Tier 3, as you mentioned, students that have the larger gap to meeting grade level standard, it's a combination of the tutoring, the frequency of tutoring. We know that many schools are implementing local design intervention programs. So the additional piece here is that how do we progress monitor where those students are? They are identified for a reason, right, of being, not demonstrating proficiency. So those are targeted students that we want to get involved with those programs. Secondly, a lot of schools at the secondary level are being creative with their master schedules to create an additional period, whether it be a double block, whether it be through their, they're changing their bell schedule. Those are some approaches that they're using, but I think to the point that
The double block for a lot of kids feels like punishment
for some it does.
because they lose their elective.
For some, that's why I believe that there are alternative schedules that allow, for example, an elective to be taken despite the double block of ELA or math. That does exist out there, and we may hear some examples today. But again, the first instruction is critical, that we're trying to get to a better place in terms of being more focused with the standards that we see happening, teaching and learning in the classroom. Those are types of supports that we want to continue to monitor. And again, the dialogue that we're having with principals in the field about what that looks like at their schools, because to your point, 81 to 78 is not an accelerated method to address the gap. So those students will be identified for these programs. These students will be identified for summer school. That's the approach that we'll take to provide as much instruction for these kids as possible.
I'll just add on maybe a couple of things. So I know for the upper grade elementary, I mentioned that we are using the intervention program Reading Horizons. So there's about 200 schools. That's an extra supplement to provide the small group foundational instruction at the 4th, 5th, and beyond level, but also in the core curriculum there are intervention materials. So in the core knowledge, language arts, for example, CKLA, there are intervention materials, and for upper grade teachers it's about using those, making the time for the small group instruction to provide the foundational skills instruction and to know how to strategically use those materials. So we're supporting that way. And then in terms of the data, I would like to say that sometimes you don't see a jump between a performance band really quickly, and I'll give Dibbles as an example. So you might start the beginning of the year and you're in the red level. We call that the well below benchmark level. And at the middle of the year, maybe you've been seeing the primary promise teacher, or your teacher has been consistent with the small group instruction for you. The student may still be at the well below benchmark level, but their composite score has grown 100 points. So that means they have recognized more sounds in words. They have blended more words. They have read more words. They're reading more fluently. They just haven't made the number of points to jump the level. So we will present our data, but it's important to know that there's growth that happens that way, and you may not see it in a level or a color, but it is happening.
Now to hear from our folks that came down to tell us how they're doing and give us some ideas about how to help people who aren't doing as well as they are.
All right, so we're going to introduce the first school, Hamasaki Elementary School. Principal Gabriela Noriega has brought some team members with her.
Welcome.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. It's quite frankly both an honor and a privilege to be given the opportunity and the platform to share with you what we're doing at Hamasaki Medical and Science Magnet. Oftentimes we're asked, Hamasaki, I've never heard of that place. It used to be known as Reagan Elementary, and we're recognized as that cute little school off the 60 freeway And you'll see it in our slide. If it moves, let's see. Did it move? Oh, it moved too much. It takes a while. Okay. And so, yes, we are Hamasaki Medical and Science Magnet, and we service 334 students in the community of East Los Angeles. We are 90%, you see some of our stats. We're 90% free and reduced lunch. And we just have an amazing team, and that's what creates the magic of our school. You know, so aside from it being this charming building, it's an amazing place. And part of the success that we are having with our literacy and in supporting our at Promise students, it's the collaboration that is happening at our schools with our teachers, our support staff, our TAs, our parents, community members. That is the key to our success. It's not enough to just put the responsibility on the teacher's shoulders to bring this instruction to our students. So when you say it takes a village, it truly does take a village, and those are the efforts that we are creating and we're focused on at Hamasaki. Our teachers leverage all of the trainings that the district, so thank you, this committee especially, because I know it comes from the Division of Instruction, in curating and finding these resources that our teachers are using and they're leveraging. And again, it's not enough to go to the trainings. I remember my first years of being overwhelmed. I remember when we were implementing language in secondary as intervention support, and being overwhelmed because we would go to the training, come back, and then we just were not giving the time to dissect and make sense of that training that we would go to. And what is happening here with our school is our teachers do exactly that. And my responsibility as a school leader is to make sure that I'm carving out time and that I'm mindful not just of their instructional time, but their personal time, right? Because it takes a lot. A lot of these trainings are being given to them during their personal time, but they're dedicated, and so they go. And so myself as a school principal is getting creative aside from the after school, because that can be taxing, right? It's definitely taxing on individuals. So we find ways during the school day that won't impact the instructional day to create that consistent time for our teachers to plan and roll out these practices, to have the discussions, to really center and hold down and look at student data, like real data. We look at MOI, we look at our assessments, but it's just a marker. It's a period of time because that's static information. And so our teachers really do spend a lot of time and looking at the instruction that is happening on a day in and day out, looking at assessments, looking at skill tests that they use and they incorporate from the CKLA program. We're a first-year pilot school this year. And that in itself is giving them the time to unpack a curriculum in a program so that they can take everything that they take from Orton, from OG, from Hegarty, 95 degrees, percent, not degrees. That's a band, isn't it? I'm aging myself. No, I'm actually a bit older than that. And just personalizing it into the instruction that the students that are in front of the teachers is what they actually need. And that is the primary focus. And yes, we have structures in place at our school. We have weekly time for our teachers to have time to meet as a grade level. Bi-weekly, we give them time in the morning. So they start at 7:40 in the morning. That's when they come in. And during breakfast in the classroom, the leadership team takes the responsibility of watching the students while they're having breakfast in the classroom so that we can release our teachers and give them extended time. So they're getting about 2 hours during the instructional day without impacting instruction to do this planning, to do this work that is so critical. Because if we want them to be successful, as a school leader, we need to set them up for that success. And that's part of our responsibility. In terms of our, yes?
Is that done once a week?
It's done once a week, 2
Yeah.
times, yes. So we.
Twice a week?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Yes. The structures that we do have, progress monitoring is done religiously every 2 weeks. And it's not just, and so the following, after they get their results, that's what they're looking at in their planning time. They're looking and they're bringing back student work and really making the best of that first instruction and implementing and sharing those best practices. For our students that we would consider at Promise, we have Primary Promise, we have ALP Academies. We're roughly in our 6th year. This year we went back to actually distributing students out, and part of the team that supports the ALP Academies is also our Primary Promise teachers. It's also our coordinators who take on groups to lessen the load on the teachers. So again, that idea that it takes a village. We offer intervention for our students that may need that additional push. So we do the traditional after-school intervention. We're very strategic. The groups, when they meet, it's very strategic in how they're placed. It's just like the ALP Academies, we sort of transfer that idea and that model into that after-school intervention. And we also are actually about to start, for us, it's new, the Amplify tutoring. So we're going to take advantage of that and continue to give those micro doses of specific, intentional, strategic supports to our students. But I want to turn the podium over to our teachers because I think they're the best ones. They are the practitioners of this work. Always fine-tuning, always finding ways to just do more for their students. And one thing I did leave out is how we support our parents to also be agents in their children's education. And so we have our coordinators do workshops through our Parent Center and teaching them about DIBELS and teaching them and giving them just a little bit, just enough that it's not daunting for the parents to take back home and just giving them that awareness of this is what your child is doing and this is why it's important and this is how you can support. We have roughly about 10 parents participating in the Latino Family Literacy Program where they too are students of literacy and going home with homework, and they like it because now they feel they can sit down with their child and say, okay, you're going to do your homework, I'm going to do my homework. So it's really bringing everyone together. But the stars of the show for me are always the teachers, and sometimes we just don't give them enough recognition for all of the hard work that they do. So I have 2 fabulous Hamasaki teachers. One is Mrs. Jeanette Villarreal. She's a 4th grade teacher, and the other teacher is Ms. Maria Elena Padilla, our Primary Promise. But I'm going to start with Ms. Villarreal.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Jeanette Villarreal. I'm a 4th grade teacher at Hamasaki Medical and Science Magnet. Thank you for the opportunity for having us here to share some of our best practices and what has been successful for us in the area of literacy. At Hamasaki, experience and dedication are significant factors that contribute to our continued success in literacy. The majority of our teachers have more than 20 years of experience in teaching. On a weekly basis, teachers collaborate intentionally and strategically to support our students' academic needs. So I really like to thank our administration and our administrator for giving us that opportunity where we're able to collaborate as a grade level to talk about the data, to talk about the best practices that each of us are doing and share and collaborate on how to further our students. And I think that's a really big part of our success, is just having that time to plan, to modify our instruction, to see what worked, what didn't work in our classrooms. Our teachers are lifelong learners, and we consistently participate in the optional professional development training to strengthen our craft. So these trainings, as our principal said, were letters, Reading Horizons, the Orton Gillingham, the Haggerty 95% group, and Small Bites. We have used this knowledge learned to enhance our best practices in teaching the science of reading in conjunction with piloting our CKLA this year. I'm not sure who mentioned how do we reach our fourth and fifth grade kiddos that aren't meeting standard, that aren't reading. And for me, as a fourth grade teacher, I saw that evident, especially after pandemic. And attending this Reading Horizons training has really been such a benefit to me, because I was like, how am I going to reach these kids that can't read? They're reading at 30 words per minute, 40 words per minute. So I'm excited to have this program available in my classroom for them. I work alongside with our resource teacher. She also provides that support for those kiddos. I do SSPTs for them that are reading below grade level. So not only am I working with my grade level partners, but I'm working with the resource teacher to provide that extra support that they need. At Hamasaki, we also take a proactive approach to intervention, starting in the primary grades to identify these students that are in need. It's a collective effort, like I said, by the teachers, our resource specialist, our intervention coordinator, our primary promise teachers, and our magnet coordinator. So just like our administrator said, we're like a team. We work together, we support each other. So I think that really plays such a strong part in the success of our literacy gains. We also encourage families to be active participants in their child's learning. Our Parent Center offers a variety of trainings, such as the Latino Family Literacy Program. We have restorative justice workshops for them as well. They also receive opportunities to learn about social emotional learning and parenting at home. Our continuous gains and academic success are attributed to our dedication to our students and the craft of our teaching. We work really hard at Hamasaki. Our staff is a hardworking staff, and thank you to the support of our administrators and our parents. I'd like to now just turn it over to the primary promise teacher, who that's a big part of our success as well, and yeah, she'll share that with you all. Thank you.
Buenas tardes, good afternoon. My name is Marilena Padilla, and I have the privilege of being the primary promise literacy teacher at Hamasaki Medical and Science Magnet. As my colleague just mentioned, at Hamasaki, we are dedicated teachers, and we work for our students' success. We all collaborate together. As a result of the ALP academies and primary promise intervention, our students in kinder through second grade have shown academic mastery in reading foundational skills. ALP has laid the foundation towards developing and implementing an instructional program targeting differentiated instruction for small groups and re-engagement in student learning. And Hamasaki was one of the first schools in the East Side to implement ALP academies, beginning with just kinder the first year. And on the second year, we carried it off to K through second. So we intentionally and strategically group students based on their lowest deficit skill and current reading ability. So their composite score is not what matters. It's their deficit lowest skill, and we build from that. And as we progress monitor every 2 weeks, and our ALP cycles are every 6 weeks, we make adjustments, and the students are moved based on their growth and needs. Primary Promise continues the ALP model. After analyzing DIBELS data, along with my teacher input, and small groups are then formed, and students are provided daily targeted instruction. Prior to starting that instruction, I provide a quick SAL lesson to prepare the students to engage in our Tier 2 instruction. I'm very fortunate to have an instructional aide, so if we see that that child, based on a SAL check-in, needs a one-to-one, or needs support, then we go ahead. We do not allow them to continue in our small group because we have to meet their needs so that they can be successful in our small group. I monitor progress every 2 weeks and confer with my students to share their gains in reading fluency. And I think that is one of the vital key points because I share with them what their score is at. I share with them their growth, whether it's minimum or grade, and then we set a new goal. Where would you like to be within 2 weeks? I find this to be very effective because it holds the students accountable and allows them to celebrate their successes. And I make myself available in the morning and after school, so when the child goes home and shares with the parent, they then come in the morning and want to validate, is it true my child went up so many points? My child came home. So I know there's that report that with the child and the parent. I also take this opportunity to share their next reading goals, as I stated. Additionally, I communicate regularly with parents and teachers of the student progress. We're soon approaching parent conference. I prepare the Reading Amplify Home Connect reports for all my teachers. I also, if necessary, print the progress monitoring where it shows the student and the parent the growth the child has made so that it can be visible and the parents can understand. Because sometimes they see numbers and they understand better. The consistent implementation and access to these programs have contributed to our literacy success at Hamasaki. And I have to say, I really thank DOI for the 95% library. I digged into it this summer, I got it out, and it's the best thing I have used in my program with Primary Promise. It's working for a lot of my students. I see those gains. Many of them are dropping. In kinder, we went from 67 to 80 in the red band to now maybe 20% of our students. In second grade, I have children coming back that I serviced prior. Ms. Padilla, I exited, but remember you told me I have to stay there. And they come and give me the report of their new scores. So that is the constant communication I have with them. I check in with them. Your progress monitoring tomorrow. Make sure you come ready. Make sure you eat breakfast because they know at Hamasaki, we do it every 2 weeks, especially those that are red and yellow. We target those students as a school as a whole. So thank you all for listening to me and my colleagues and for sharing all these great practices that happen at Hamasaki.
Nobody objects, we're going to wait to hear all 4 presentations and then come back to them. Go ahead.
All right, the next school is Kittredge Elementary School, and we actually have the assistant principal, Joel Martinez, and former Primary Promise teacher, along with their Primary Promise teacher to present.
Zes, Imanuna, Mr. Martinez. Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Joel Martinez. Good afternoon. I am Joel Martinez. I am the proud assistant principal at Kittredge Elementary, where we have 2 dual language programs, the Armenian dual language program and the Spanish dual language program. I like to call our school the jewel of the San Fernando Valley because of these programs. We are very proud of our teachers that are part of this program, and we have met the needs, and we heard the call of our communities saying we want these programs, and this is why we brought our Armenian program and our Spanish program to this community. Our school is a school of 763 students. That's including our state preschool. We are a Title I school. We have 89 newcomers at our school, with more coming in the last few months. We have been getting students from Russia, the Ukraine, from Afghanistan. We welcome them all because we are very, very happy to say to them, come here because we have a place for you and we are here to educate you and to help you be a part of our community. And so, you know, although I'd like to talk about our dual language programs, I know you want to hear about our wonderful work in literacy. And if we could have our slide that shows our data. I want to talk about our data. You know, coming back from the pandemic, we knew that it was going to be a lot of work. And the data at the end of the year of last year showed, okay, we have our work cut up for us. So one of the first things that our principal, Mr. Jimenez, and the team, we got together and we said, okay, one of the things we know is that we have to work together to address the needs. What do we see? We know we have our 2 primary promise instructors being provided to us by the district, but we need somebody for upper grades. We allocated funds to have an upper grade teacher to be our we could call her like our upper grade primary promise, if you will. A shout out to Ms. DeMont. So if we look at our data, let's go ahead and look at our second slide. You know, when we look at our data at the end, we see that at the beginning of the year, we saw our boy data, it was kind of abysmal, the last 2 little slides at the end. We saw that only 42% of our kinders were at advanced, at benchmark or advanced levels. And you could see the data for yourselves. You know, we had 52% at first grade. I can't see them from here, but needless to say, it was under half of our population at benchmark or above benchmark, and we're like, that's not acceptable. We need to make sure that we increase these numbers. So getting together with our team and having our wonderful primary promise teachers as part of our team to discuss what are we going to do, we knew we had to do more work with our upper grades as well. And having one of our key players here today, which is Ms. Milan, who is our reading specialist from Primary Promise, she did a lot of work with our staff, and I want her to, I don't want to take away all her, her information that she's going to present to you, but a lot of the work really came from having her work with our staff and really being a visionary as to how are we going to empower our instructors so that they can be the ones to deliver this, this needed instruction so that we're not always outsourcing. Yes, we do have our tutoring. Yes, we do have our Saturday schools. Yes, we do have all those wonderful programs that we've had. But really the key to our success, to seeing all the MOI data that we just saw, where we saw incremental growth with every single grade is over half at benchmark or above. All of them increased. The reason is because of the great work that she is going to talk to you about that has been happening at our school. And I am a micro-credential holder of the reading specialist, I want to say, and I'm very proud. So I know how important this program is. I was also a primary promise teacher, by the way, before I became an assistant principal. So I know how important this work is, and I know how important it is to expand the work to our upper grades as well. So Ms. Milan, could you come and share with the board?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much. It's a privilege to be here. Thank you so much that you're giving us this platform to really share our passion, what we've been doing at Kittredge Street, and I've just been so blessed to be part of this work. So the story is, there's the Ladder of Reading, and it's an infographic by Nancy Young, and really what it shows is that about 40% of 5% actually of students will just effortlessly pick up reading. About 35% will do just fine with broad-based reading instruction. But really, 40 to 50% will need some explicit, and then 10 to 15% might fall under the dyslexia category of students who will need some more, let's say tier 3 explicit direct instruction, right? So that's the message that I really wanted to bring to Kittredge. And that really came through my practice first as a person who served as a preschool through 6th grade teacher in general education. Then I became, I served in special education for a while as a teacher in a special day class, and then also as a resource teacher. So I got to see things from different lenses. And then when I became a Title III coach during the 2020 year, and I met all my Kittredge colleagues through Zoom, that's how I got hired and I met them, I noticed that the foundational skills were part 3 of our ELD standards. And I thought, okay, well, so many of our students are potential long-term English learners, aren't really reclassifying, and now they're in 4th and 5th grade, and let's look at their DIBEL scores, and let's see, well, where's that? And I started looking at looking at the Focus platform and thinking, okay, so many are in this category here, what can we do? And so that's when Reading Horizons was one of the wonderful programs that was that we could train our teachers in, and they received this wonderful kit, this beautiful bag with all these resources. And so the plan was to have, to ask our teachers if they wanted to be trained in it, and all our staff was. And our fourth grade teachers, in particular, were so excited about it afterwards because they came to us. They came to us and told us, hey, we see the difference. Now, then Primary Promise was brought to our school, and I was asked, well, you know, would you be interested in this? And I said, yes, of course, because I already applied to become to pursue a reading and literacy added authorization. So I did that last year, but prior to that, I had already, I just want to say that we have this wonderful, our district really provides us so many opportunities for professional development. There were so many PDs on the science of reading and cadres that I had participated in during the pandemic. And so when I started my authorization, well, a lot of the PDs that I brought are right there too. So looking at what I've been doing and with the work as a team, so we've brought in parent workshops, reading challenges school-wide. So we've been working on promoting a culture of literacy at Kittredge. And really, it's a multifaceted approach. So motivating our students with the reading challenges. They take these bingo cards home, they read with their parents, they bring in the tear-off slips. We give them books as prizes. They get to kind of shop for their books. Then we found some great conferences, the Reading League and the Center for Literacy and Learning. Those are two great national conferences. When I attended those conferences, I attended one, everything that was presented there, everything that we've been learning about here in the district with structured literacy, I mean, it was right on. I said, wow, this is great. So the picture there that you see, those are all my colleagues who attended. But they're all from different grade levels because anyone who was interested in going on that trip had to do a commitment form where they would have to come back and present to the rest of the staff. So we had our APEIS presenting on something. We had every single person presented on a component of literacy. Then you'll see that we have structured literacy lesson plans. We're creating a bank. And the reason why we're doing that is to be able to target that instruction because DIPL's it's just a indicator, but it's not a diagnostic really to really tell us what the child is missing. So to reach that gap, we really need to kind of be that practitioner that goes, oh, you know what? This child is really, it's kind of going back to those 6-syllable types. Once they know those 6-syllable types, they've cracked the code. They can read. So all of that, the reading horizons, the letters, the structured literacy PDs, the Orton-Gillingham approach, all of those, the action seminars, all those tie in with everything that we've been doing at Kittredge. It's a work in progress. It's a work that we're very passionate about. And just thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to just come here and share our story, a story that we hope, we know will just continue to grow with. Thank you.
A good story. Thank you very
you.
much for sharing it.
All right, so we're going to invite up Principal Justin Lauer from Young Oak Academy and his team.
I do hate to say this, but I would like everybody to kind of be a little briefer because we still have public comment to do and we try to finish at 5:30. We're obviously not going to do that today, but
Don't worry, Board Member President Goldberg. I want to say thank you to everybody. We'll be brief as we can. Dr. McKenna, you didn't get a chance to hear our program last time, Committee of the Whole, about our middle school A through G program. Everything runs through it. And for middle school especially, as Ms. Bias knows, Board Member and Board President Goldberg, and Board Member Ortiz, you're there somewhere, cyberspace. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. If we could have a slide up, we can get through this real quick. There. Oh. It's coming. I would like to take a second to dedicate the success of reading and literacy in our school to my beloved mother, Patricia Guzik Stevens Lauer, who passed away yesterday. I don't want to put a downer on this because this is just the opposite. She cared deeply about what we're doing. She cared deeply about kids, and that comes through in my work. And her mother, my grandmother, was a pioneer in At Promise Kids, teaching those kids in English in 1960s, who wrote a book about it. So that work flows through, and she cared deeply and respected all of you tremendously and commented all the time about that. So thank you for letting me dedicate this work to her. Who are we? Who are the Yoka Dragons? Well, we are, a Title I FABAO school, almost 100% free and reduced lunch. We are a public middle school who has miraculously changed into kind of a magnet school in terms of what our kids are doing. And I'll get to, Dr. McKenna, your question about how we do this with our kids. It's about culture. And let me tell you something. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. We've heard that. And I guarantee you, all of these colleagues back here have the same thing, and that is we care deeply about our kids, and it needs to resonate with all of our members of our people. And I will tell you this, I ask every single person I hire, first question, why do you care about kids? Tell me. Some of them are taken aback with that. But our staff members, all of them are incredible, and they care deeply about kids, and that's why kids follow what we ask them to do. So there's some data. There's a picture there I shared with some of our leaders. 550 students receiving awards from fall. 800 awards were given out. Thank God we have great donors who give us money for this, recognizing kids for everything you need to, every single thing. Every kid needs to be recognized for their strengths. Next slide. Do I have a clicker? Oh, I have a clicker. Thank you very much. Let's get to the nitty-gritty, nuts and bolts. The A through G program is what we do. It creditizes and gives points and culmination points and credits for everything students do in middle school, and that is the key component. When we say, okay, how are we going to recognize kids? Give them a culmination point. They need to feel like everything is important. So I want to introduce my superstar English teacher, one of them, we have many, and that is Mr. De La Cruz, and he'll talk about the English department's strategies.
Just lower this a little bit. Good evening now, esteemed LAUSD team. I am fortunate to be a 7th grade English teacher at Young O Kim Academy, and I am fortunate to have the colleagues that I have as a department. One of them standing next to me today, the rest I'm sure watching. Salient points that make our reading program at Young O Kim Academy, they can stand on their own, and they would probably function individually. But the truth of it is that, like us, they work best when they are interconnected. And that is a key element in our practice, both our humane practice and our reading program practices at Young O Kim Academy. I'll go ahead and start with the first point, which is providing diverse, culturally relevant, and UDO-aligned reading options for students. Whether it's on MyON, AR, whether students are reading at their zone of proximal development based on a MyON recommendation, or a good old-fashioned library recommended reading, our students are reading at all fronts. They're either listening to an audiobook, they're looking at an ebook, or my personal favorite, they have a print copy of a book in hand. That's key, understanding that our students are reading at school, but they are also doing it at home. Ms. Quintero would talk about the amazing numbers that we have of independent reading time through MyON and through various initiatives. Another thing that I value personally, Dr. Lauer and team, is the autonomy that we are provided as teachers. I feel that our expertise are respected at YOCA, that yes, there is a set curriculum, StudySync, works wonders. Our EOD curriculum, English 3D, Reading Horizons, they work wonders. But they don't work the wonders that us as teachers who are at the forefront, who understand that our students' backgrounds include different languages like Quiche, like Tagalog. At Young O Kim Academy in particular, because we are at the heart of Los Angeles, we're in Koreatown. So we appreciate that autonomy. We're able to curate, we're able to supplement and complement any of the materials that we deem necessary in order to meet our students' learning needs and their cultural backgrounds. Hand in hand with that is the conversations that we have during our department time, during our X time. Thank you very much for that. During our X time, during time outside of the classroom, during our own times, where we have conversations about best practices. At Young Oak Kim Academy, we value, we honor the voices of our veteran teachers, and we empower the voices of our newer teachers. We talk about strategies across the board, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, but also talk with departments, our history departments, our science departments. How can we echo what's happening in one class in the other classes? An example, at 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, our students get tired, they get fed up of seeing the race response. They know that they have to restate an answer, cite textual evidence, and explain it. And they hear it all the time that analysis works the hardest because it's okay with just taking textual evidence. But we want them to think, to interact with what they're reading. At Young Oak Kim Academy, we use Kagan strategies because we understand that writing is not the only way in which we interact with literature. We understand that we could talk about the abolitionist movement the abolitionist movement's papers by Frederick Douglass that Mr. Winnell teaches in his 8th grade class. We could talk about the Holocaust and genocide unit that Ms. Drobowicz teaches in her 8th grade class. And we could talk about all the essential questions on StudySync that the other colleagues in our department teach. Lastly, but not least, we have regular department adopted formative assessments. Whether it's the beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year STAR test, we do them, and we do them with fidelity. If they change the next year, it's not up to us, but we understand that our students need to take those tests. Whether it's an IAB assessment, benchmark 1 and benchmark 2, we take these tests with fidelity, but most importantly, we talk about the data, and we have the time, the opportunity to talk about the data. We look at our strengths in our students. We look at areas where they are excelling, but we also look at places where there is struggle, where there is productive struggle, because a struggle is good. A struggle invites learning. Another thing that I feel that makes our program, our reading program at Young Oak Kim Academy a thriving program is the collaboration. And once more, the interconnection between our families, our teachers, our community, our staff. With that in mind, I'd like to say, gracias, Madre, por venir hoy. And I will hand it over to Ms. Quintero, who's standing next to me and is one of the biggest collaborators we have at Young Oak Kim. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. De La Cruz Rosales. Good evening, members of the board, Curriculum and Instruction Committee members. My name is Carla Quintero, the YOCA teacher librarian. I've been asked to share school-wide initiatives at YOCA that promote and celebrate literacy. So we do our best to combine rigor and fun that involve the larger literary community. And the first initiative was a book signing event that we had 2 weeks ago, where we partnered with Locavore Lit LA and invited 2 guest authors. Students had a chance to ask questions to learn about the authors' personal journeys in becoming writers. The event culminated with a book signing in which everyone received a copy of the author's works. Students, staff, and guest feedback were incredibly positive. So thank you, Dr. Lauer, for letting that all happen. Another school-wide initiative that is unique to YOCA is our annual Young Oak Kim Quiz Bowl. And over 100 students sign up and read to or listen to Colonel Kim's biography. And sometime in late May, staff from the Young Oak Kim Center at UC Riverside join us for a very competitive quiz bowl. This is always a fun event because it allows our 6th graders to get to know the hero behind the name. And it's symbolic to our 8th graders because, you know, they're getting ready to culminate and moving on to high school. So finally, we are currently participating in the LAUSD Reading Challenge through Renaissance Mayan application. And we continue to receive positive feedback from district, which is really not surprising since our students have been using this online reading app for some time. Since winning last year's Reading Blast-Off contest and leading the current challenge, I think we're still leading, right? We've enhanced our fall and spring parent workshops that will take place in the next couple of weeks. So the workshop will consist of 3 components. The first component is the parent portal led by our Parent Center. Second component, we have our teachers that will explain how Schoology works and make that connection from the parent portal to Schoology. And finally, library staff will just talk about the STAR Mayan AR connection. Since STAR results interface with Mayan, parents and students can monitor their own reading levels, which results in, you know, taking ownership of their learning. So these are some examples of our school-wide initiatives at Yoka where we strive to meet UDL guidelines using personal relevance, different ways of approaching content, and verbal or written feedback from our students. So thank you.
I know we're pressed for time. Dr. McKenna and anybody else would take a look at our last slides from the Committee of the Whole to look at our middle school A through G program, but it's working phenomenally with our school. We don't have any drama. We don't have fights. We don't have issues. Our kids care for one another. And that is modeled through this program and through celebrating not only academic, social, emotional achievements, but anything the students are doing to help one another. Real quick, before we end, I want to just talk about a couple. We've gone up 17% in SBAC meets or exceeds over the last 2 testing sessions because of the literacy work that these folks are doing and my school staff. We are beating every other school right now in literacy, reading in the Blast-Off contest, not only middle school, but any schools. By a wide margin, including 18,000 non-school minutes. That's extremely important. That's not at school. That means they're going home and reading for the love of reading. And I will tell you this, over the pandemic, I think why we have so much calmness in our culture and positivity is because the kids were reading to escape from the pandemic issues, from all of the stress and everything else. So we've really been really successful with getting our kids to love reading and to love reading for their own purposes, and we give them a huge library to choose from, and we celebrate that work. So that's it, and I want to thank you all for listening.
All right, and the last school, Principal Nicole Gricall from Marquez Libra Academy.
Hello, thank you so much for having us. We're excited to be here and share what we're doing at Libra. Thank you to President, congratulations, Jackie Goldberg, who had the pleasure, I hope, of coming to Libra and seeing some of the things that we have been doing. We are a small pilot school in Huntington Park. We have 610 kids. We are also Title I. We have everybody gets free and reduced lunch at Libra. We are a distinguished school. We are a semi-new SAS program. It's about 4 years old. We are the only school, I believe, in East that is AP Capstone. And we are highly, highly dedicated to mastery learning. All of our teachers are trained in it, and we have been doing it for about 8 years, since before the district started doing it. Everything that we do is based on our 3 core values. Our 3 core values are being student-centered, relationship building, and having a growth mindset. So our staff all of our staff believes in these core values, and every decision we make, all of our PD that is focused on those 3 core values. And that, I agree with the former principal, that is our culture. The students know that we're all about kids. Like, we don't have people that work at Libra that don't love kids. That's just, you need to love kids in order to work at Libra. And because of that, we really listen to the kids, and we are very student-centered. We have what we call enrichment and targeted learning. And so enrichment and targeted learning are the time of the day. We have it's 2 times a week, which is kind of like our intervention program. However, targeted learning is incredibly targeted based on learning targets that students need extra support in. And so that's what we're going to be talking about in a moment. Enrichment is the other part. Students that aren't in targeted learning have enrichment classes, which are things like knitting, yoga. I have pictures up there of the students doing different things, cosmetology. And so if you don't have targeted learning, you're in enrichment, which is very student-centered. So we've been pretty successful, our ELA department, and some of the data I just wanted to share is that pre-pandemic, our distance from standard was positive 32, which is pretty good for high school in LA Unified. And post-pandemic, our distance from standard was positive 35. So we went up. With the pandemic, we still went up. And so I'm pretty proud to say that. And how do we do that? Our amazing department chair is about to talk about that. But we also had really big gains with our EL population because we've noticed that our EL students struggle the most at Libra. And so during the pandemic, their average score was negative 210 from distance from standard. But after the pandemic, we raised them to negative 46. Obviously, we still have a ways to go. However, that is a huge, huge jump that we had because we hired an intervention specialist that follows those students and pushes in with them. One of the things we do during targeted learning, the district asked us this year to do an acceleration intervention program. So we had 30 students that were given names of students. So we did that through targeted learning. And the way, and we had 5 teachers in that class, and they met twice a week. And that's how we really addressed the kind of our most struggling students. Of the 30 students, 11 of them in the middle of that time tested out because they met the standard. They were focusing on author's purpose. They got it. They got to go into enrichment. I'm happy to say that of those 30 students, 67% of them showed growth on Renaissance. So from the fall scores to the current winter scores, 67% of them have improved. I want to introduce Caitlin Martindale, who is our, I can't even list all the things she does because we were a pilot school, so everybody does a million things. But Caitlin is our department chair, so she's on our ILT. She's our WASC coordinator, and WASC starts this Sunday. And so thank you very much, Ms. Martindale, because she's amazing. And so she's going to talk more specifically about how we support our struggling readers and our ELA department.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm used to talking to 17-year-olds all day, so you'll have to excuse me because I'm not accustomed to this formality. I think for us at Libra, everyone has 18 different jobs, but we love every student that comes through our doors, and I like to think that that shows in every single class that we teach. That's the foundation of my practice, and I know that that's the foundation of all the other English teachers at my school as well. We believe in engagement, student engagement. If they don't care, why would they want to come to your class, right? It's what you talked about, Dr. McKenna. How do we get students that don't want to read? How do we get them to want to read? I think part of that is an ongoing negotiation, but it's also in the care and the choice and the autonomy that we provide for students as well within our classrooms. We provide a lot of student-centered instruction. Students get to choose what they learn about. They get to choose what they read during independent reading time. They're constructing their own knowledge. We're providing learning opportunities for them. I'm not the authority on everything in the classroom. We want to learn from them as well. It's really important that we have our intervention coordinator, like Nikki was talking about previously. She teaches 3 ELD classes a day, schedules our intervention classes for teachers and students, and she also pushes into grade level classes for all of our English learners. And she's providing constant services for them that absolutely helps us increase those test scores. Our EL testing and our LPAC data indicates that our English learners are definitely benefiting from those services that she's providing. Our ILT uses student data to plan every professional development, which we have every single Tuesday for an hour after school. We use student data to talk about EL strategies. Our SPED team and our RSP teachers will give us an hour to talk about special ed strategies that work for all students, right? Strategies that work for special ed students work for all learners. And so it's really important that we have those teachers have a voice in our school because they're the experts in what they teach, but we need to collaborate. Our instruction coordinator, or I guess what is Diaz's job? Instructional coach. He's a teacher that has like 15 years of experience teaching English, but he works mostly with new teachers. We have 6 to 7 new teachers on staff, teachers that have 3 years or less experience, which is a lot for a 27-person staff. Not only do we need to support students, but we need to support new teachers as well and ensure that they're providing quality instruction for our populations, but also that they're building capacity and they learn how to work and plan with others. Within our department, each teacher teaches an entire grade level. So I teach every 12th grade student, and my colleagues teach 11, 10, and 9, which means that we're not planning together for grade level assessments and grade level activities. However, we are each week on Thursdays when we're provided co-planning time. We are doing vertical alignment. We're talking about strategies that are working for us, formative assessments, summative assessments, how to plan using UDL. All of these strategies, we're working together to ensure that everyone's practice is research-based and successful. We also utilize IEB data and STAR data from the district to determine which students need small group instruction, which students need to be in intervention classes. And every day during independent reading, we give independent reading for 15 minutes every single day, and we confer with students the entire independent reading time. So I typically confer with 3 to 5 students per class period, talking about what they're enjoying about their book, the struggles that they're having. It's a great time to have an SEL moment with students as well, to chat, to get to know them, but to also get to the heart of the struggles that they're having in their reading practice or in the class, generally speaking. And then finally, in terms of practice, student talk guides pretty much everything that we do. At Libra, I want my students talking with their neighbor, talking with their small groups, talking about the instruction constantly during class every single day. We do a ton of small group instruction, station work. Most of my teachers in the English department do station work at least once a week. Every time we plan, it's UDL, using differentiation strategies. We do constant feedback, writing conferences. So not only are we conferring with students whenever they're reading, we're conferring with students whenever they're writing. We make sure that everything is transparent for students as well. They know exactly where they are and what skill level they're at, basically, so that they know where they can improve, and we do a lot of self-reflection and goal setting as well. And then the most important thing for me, I think, is that we're provided time at Libra. Every Thursday, we have an hour after school to co-plan, whether that be with your department, with your RSP teacher who's co-teaching with you in your classroom, or informal department meetings that happen whenever you have such a small staff. And so I think that time is so important for our staff personally, especially since we have so many hats that we wear. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Well, what an impressive set of presentations. I have to thank all of you for that. That really, really kind of hoping forward. And I'm going to ask Dr. McKenna first if you have any questions or comments of any or all of these folks.
Well, you talked about time being a challenge here, and I would have so much to say about, with such gratitude, what I've seen there. I will just comment briefly. It takes me back to my classroom teaching days, and I never stopped caring about kids even when I became an administrator and trying to encourage them. I will say this, I sense the magnetism, I sense the love of children. I don't have to sense it, it's obvious, and that's why you're successful. And you also have a competitive zeal, which I enjoy. I resonate with that because when I was growing up, I was an athlete and I competed in many sports. In high school, I had 4, football, basketball, track, and baseball. I was good at all of them. If you hear me tell it, I was great. I could be lying, though. And then I went to the university and I competed in 3 others, not football, it wasn't large enough. But what I realized that as much as I enjoyed winning, and we won a lot, I hated to lose. Winning, they gave me a little trophy and I was happy with that, but I didn't boast about that. But it was aggravating for me to lose. And when I would see, as a classroom teacher, kids I couldn't reach that would torment me, would keep me up at night. I could celebrate all the others who were great and understand what I was talking about, but the ones who couldn't get it tormented me. And it drove me to try to find ways to assist. And I think you're doing that without necessarily being tormented by it, but that you don't allow the students who are not getting it to stay in that state. So thank you. I don't have any questions. We could sit there all night and talk, because I'm learning. I learn from you. I love to learn about what you're doing. And one of the things I think, Ms. Goldberg, and Ms. Baez in particular, throughout the district, when we find nuggets like this, they need to be observed and visited by others who can learn from them. Whether they want to or not, they should be encouraged. We cover their classes and let them go see where it works and learn from that. And maybe they'll be inspired to come back, because they are inspirational on their own. Whether you talk to me or not, you go back and where your inspiration is most needed. I'm just gratified that you're here and that you do exist. I recall when I would visit classrooms, I broke my teachers up into categories. I won't say and there were the excellent, average, and the ones that needed help. I didn't have to visit the great teachers often, but I should have more, because it was a pleasure to go in there. I almost wanted to genuflect and throw some graffiti up in the air and some incense, and because I could say, oh Lord, it really exists in this building. Here they are. And I didn't have to do any chastising at all. I was just grateful that they existed. That's who you are. Or they wouldn't have brought you down here. You're good looking and all of that, but that's not why they brought you here. They brought you here because you have skills and you've demonstrated success. Thank you for being who you are. Thank you for who you're going back and continue to be. Thank you. No questions.
Ms. Franklin, board member, would you like to make any comments or questions?
Yeah, thank you to all the schools. It was definitely a lot of information. Appreciated the concrete stories from the classroom and the data for each school. Maybe a follow-up for the team. I know this is something the budget team has been working on, but I found myself curious about how we might quantify per pupil what we spend on literacy supports. I was thinking about it last month too with mathematics. You know, do we spend 10% on literacy and 10% on math? Do we spend 40% on literacy and 40% on math, of like 100%? I don't know if this is a question for Ms. Baez or for the budget team, but I think it's something we should consider over time given how much we spend per child, how much goes towards math, how much goes towards literacy, and the various supports we have. So maybe not a follow-up for next month, but I realize that it's a big ask, but I think it could help us when we are making decisions at the board around budgeting. But again, thank you to all the school site presenters and thank you to the instructional team as well.
All right. Anybody else from the panel here wish to ask any questions, make any comments?
Just a big fat thank you. And tomorrow's Friday. Thank you for being here. It's amazing what you do every day.
I just had a couple of comments. First of all, to say thank you for all that you're doing. And I hope that one of the things we're going to ask of you, soon to be Dr. Baez, is that we figure out how we extend what they have learned to other schools. Because really the goal is not just to say great work and go back and continue. It's to say you've presented to us ideas that make sense. And they make sense from a variety of ways, but you're in different schools in different parts of the district, but you're seeing positive outcomes. And how do we ask our administrator in charge of all instruction here, how do we replicate this? And what things do we need to do? Do we need money? Do we need time? Do we need people to be substituting so teachers can go visit them? What do we need to do? Not something we're going to figure out, but we're going to ask you to figure that out. That's one of the takeaways from tonight's meeting. The other thing I would say to you is I still would like to see some breakout, not just from these 4 schools, but in general about the growth of those students who are far from the end. Far from there, because really, I know you're making progress with them too. I just looked back at the list from Libra, and I see that they made progress even with the folks that were in EL. Okay, English language learners dropped from, or gained actually, is how we would put it, from being 210 points away from standard to 46. That's remarkable. That's hard to believe, but I believe you. And we don't do this very often. We don't do this very often. We see it in this group closer to the end. Thank God we see it. I'm not saying don't do that anymore, but I'm really looking for those folks that are way far away, particularly in upper elementary and in middle school, because if we catch them there, high school's a whole different story for them. Just a whole different story for them. So really, I want to thank you for what you're doing, and I really mostly want to see how we can figure out how to expand it. This little chart of improvement on the Libra, I would like to see for all of the schools that were here, because I got little pieces of it, but I'd like to be able to say to people, look what they did there with their EL, or whatever it is, okay? I have 2 other questions. Generally speaking, for our director here, not our director, the DOI leader here. After school, question from Dr. McKenna, are the most vulnerable kids actually going? And if they are in some schools and not in other schools, how do those schools that are getting them to come? If you want to right now, go right ahead.
Yeah, sure. So recently, we've been having meetings with our principals of the highest need schools, and that has been precisely the question that we've been asking. We have data that shows the number and percentage of students who are in need, who are attending the after-school tutoring or locally designed programs, and we have been asking those that have had high participation what has been working. What principals have told us about those that are not staying after school, not attending, is that there's not enough motivation, or students are not coming, or there's many reasons students are working. So we are looking at ways of providing additional tutoring during the day so that students access it. So please know that we are finding that there are gaps in terms of students attending. Principals are trying everything they can. The neediest students are being invited, are being addressed. They don't all attend, but we're doing something to respond to that.
Well, one of the things maybe we can find out from those schools that are doing better at attendance, how they're getting that to happen. The other question I have for you that didn't come up at all, but I have been going to a lot of my early education centers and visiting some ETK and TK classrooms in some of my schools. I would like to know what we know about the impact of kids attending those kinds of preschool on the actual outcomes for them. Because I suspect that the more we can get those little kids at 2 years old and 3 years old and 4 years old into these places where they're getting not only quality daycare, but also quality instruction, that we're going to see bigger jumps in academic outcomes for them in the elementary schools. But I don't know that that's true. So I would like to see if we can get some research done on that. What happened to SRLDP? School language, school readiness language development program. Do we do it anymore? Oh, it's ETK now? All right. I remember how important it was when we first started doing it in the 1980s, so I just wondered what happened. Nobody mentioned it today, so I don't know what happened to it. All right. I think that's probably all I have. I will continue to work, I hope, with the Division of Instruction on this question, particularly on the kids furthest away from our goals. Now, I think we're done unless anybody else has any questions or comments. Go right ahead, please.
Okay, just wanted to mention that there's some common things that I saw amongst all of your presentations, and I really thank you all for sharing the strategies that you're using at your school. They've really yielded results. You all care and love your students very deeply, and they know it. You all have common planning time. You all progress monitor. You all group your students based on their needs, and they are groups that students can come in and out of. You all have professional development. You all have persistence, and you want to make sure that every student achieves. And the students know their level of performance, and that is also very, very helpful. I want you to know that recently at the Committee of the Whole, these are the strategies I shared. When looking at schools that increased by 30 points closer to standards, we recognize that these were the practices in place at your schools, and that's what we reported out to the Board of Education. These are precisely the strategies that we want to scale up across our district. So we do have an action team that is currently working on developing or designing professional development for the summer and beyond for all of our teachers in LAUSD so that they are learning the strategies that you're implementing at the school site. As we're reaching a place of coherence, that is one of our missions. Our mission is to make sure that every teacher in all of our schools is implementing those same practices and that we eliminate the variability, because that's why there's such a big gap. And also knowing that we have specific strategies in place for our neediest schools and our neediest students. With our Education Transformation Office and our collaboration, we are making sure that we're tapping into the resources and providing them the support that they need. Additional intervention, additional primary promise teachers and instructional aides are definitely what has been helping our students improve. And we'll bring back data on how our schools are improving, and we will bring back information about the impact of preschool on our elementary grades, because we do know that there's research out there that shows there's a correlation of students improving, and particularly in the highest needs communities. But we'll bring back a report to our board members. Thank you.
Okay. All very much. Go home before it rains. Be safe this next couple of days. I know that's going to be a troublesome time for a lot of you with no place to put kids in the rain tomorrow. We have, at least in BD5, a number of schools that don't have indoor spaces to put kids for lunch, and I don't know what the heck they're going to do. But good luck, and we want to thank all of you very much for all that you do. Thank you all so very much. And then we'll go right into, really, I mean, what an outstanding set of reports. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I think that's felt by everybody up here. All right, let's hear now from public comment.
Okay, everybody.
Wayne.
My name is Mike McLean. We're going to go into the public comment portion of the show. As a reminder to all those out in our listening or viewing audience, in order to make public comment, you go sign up online at boe.lausd.net and follow the links. And then you follow the very instructions we have on that page in order to call in and make comment. And I'm just going to review them briefly for you here. When you are signed up, you call 888-475-4499 from a telephone. We don't accept public comment from computers that click on a Zoom link or anything like that. It's all from a telephone or from here in person. With that said, let's go to Dwayne Washington. Mr. Dwayne Washington, I see you're on the line. Please press *6 to unmute yourself. and you'll have 3 minutes to speak once you begin. Mr. Dwayne Washington.
Hello, my name is Dwayne Washington. I'm the proud principal of View Park Prep Elementary and Middle School in South Los Angeles on Crenshaw and 52nd Street. First of all, I just want to say I am excited and very fortunate. I picked the right board meeting to come to. That was very amazing information. I was taking notes and just really appreciate hearing all the wonderful things that are happening in our local schools. My purpose of getting on today was to formally invite all board members out to our Black History program on March the 3rd. We have 2 shows. The first show will be at 12 o'clock, with the second starting shortly after at 1 o'clock. Park Elementary and Middle School, we are a Leader in Me school. If you're not familiar with Leader in Me is a program that uses Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People to teach scholars leadership skills. So we are infusing the Leader in Me program into our Black History program with the theme of Black leadership. Scholars will learn Black leaders about Black leaders of the past, what Black leadership looks like in the present, and how they can be leaders now and in the future. So again, scholars will present Black history through music, dance, spoken word. It's going to be a show. So again, we cordially invite all board members out to this event. And just as we learn from, celebrate, and empower our scholars to engage with Black history during this month. So again, thank you all.
Thank you for the invitation.
Okay, Arya M. Burkett. I see you're on the line. Press *6 to unmute yourself, and you have 3 minutes to speak once you begin. Ira Burkett.
Hi, can you hear me?
We sure can. You have 3 minutes.
All right, thank you. To my dear parents, students, and council members, I'm Ira Burkett, a Muslim American student in SoCal. A few months ago, I had the privilege of addressing the CNUSD board members about the importance of Eid. So today, I plan to do the same to you. Islam is the world's 2nd largest religion. Eid al-Fitr is one of the most important holidays celebrated by Muslims that marks the end of the 9th month of the Islamic calendar, Ramadan, which is less than a month away. Eid al-Adha is the 2nd most cherished holiday celebrated by Muslims. These holidays include incredible religious ceremonies, but beyond that, they hold incredible cultural significance. Many families celebrate by cooking traditional foods, wearing cultural clothes, and buying and giving gifts. Every year when I was in school, I took the day of Eid off, as many of my fellow Muslim classmates did. As an overachieving student, I was willing to ruin my perfect attendance for Eid because of the religious value and cultural significance it holds for me. Many teachers often assign tests and major projects on the days of these holidays due to their ignorance of Eid. Los Angeles public schools are in recess during the Christian holiday of Christmas, which holds incredible religious and cultural significance to Christians. Under California law, a student may be excused from school for the absence of a religious holiday, but Muslim students are still missing in-person learning and therefore are more likely to fall behind. New York City, Detroit, and Dearborn, Michigan, Trenton, Atlantic City, Patterson, and Montclair, New Jersey, Iowa City, Iowa, Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Montgomery County, Maryland, Broward County, Florida, and San Francisco, California have included Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha as school holidays. My hope is that cities as diverse as Los Angeles would be willing to do the same. I started a petition in the cities of Corona and Norco, which has over 1,600 signatures. Eid is the start. In order to achieve equality, there are so many more holidays students deserve off, including Chinese New Year and Diwali. Students deserve to have the holidays off that are important to them. Before I conclude, I wanted to share a few comments from the petition to show you how important this is to the community. The first one says, I am signing because the Muslim community deserves recognition. We are the 2nd largest religion in the world and the 1st fastest growing. I think we should have the right to get a day off for our special holiday. So let's make Eid a day off. Another one reads, as a soon-to-be educator, inshallah, I would like my religion to be represented in more schools than just as much as Christianity is being enforced. Equality matters. Equality does matter. Los Angeles is a place known for its diversity and culture, so let's show that we are embracing that. And with that, I will conclude with a quote from Sonia Sotomayor. Until we get equality in education, we won't have an equal society. Thank you, and thank you for listening.
Thank you for your very well-timed comment. Mr. David Tokovsky, I see you have breezed into the room. Mr. David Tokovsky, come on up. You have 3 minutes to speak once you begin.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Goldberg of Reading, Superintendent of Reading. Kept us on the focus of reading. Every time we have a board meeting, you're there to talk about reading, and this is just a tiny piece of what we ought to be doing. We should be talking to the new mayor, and the new mayor should adopt a book, and that's the book that the city reads. We should be talking to the MTA so that they're on every bus and every train. Like any modern industrialized city, there's reading that happens available to people on buses and trains. There's stands. We should be talking to foundations to think big. We should not be just talking about a tiny piece. This is the most exciting part of learning, and we've turned it into a drill and kill. Kids do not want to get excited about it. We should be reading books in all of the pre-K, not half a book and never finishing it because the structure of the day only gives 35 minutes and the teacher can't finish the preschool book. We should be distributing books on winter break, on spring break, connected to the excitement of social studies and science. Exactly what Ms. Goldberg is talking about, readable stuff that is what we used to call high interest, low reading, but adapted in every way. To just talk about the, what's the buzzword, education word? At promise, is just such a minutia way of looking at it. There are so many private sector companies and foundations who want to get excited about reading. And we need to, the work of Ms. Baez and others is just so many topics. I mean, the elementary school director has so many things going on that there has to be something that is every day, not Ms. Goldberg's comments in each and every of these meetings about reading. And I just like, well, put Ms. Goldberg in charge of reading. Yeah, but she spent her whole, your existence, your talk about all the time, just like we're blessed to have two icons. When we talk about math, we've got Dr. McKenna to start telling us everything from the Sputnik satellites that he saw as a kid growing up in Louisiana, to bring the excitement and the experience and make all players in this town, from the sports teams, kids can figure out, you tell them how many 13 three-point shots and 15 two-point shots, they'll give you the answer of how many that is. Then you go into the classroom and you start doing your 2s and 3s times tables, and it's a little bit of a struggle. So what I'm trying to bring forward, Ms. Baez and Ms. Goldberg, thank you for bringing reading to the center. But let's not bite off a tiny piece on reading, okay? It's an important, like a football team has 14 different coaches. It's a piece of the team's coaching. But I think we need to really accelerate this. So the superintendent is even telling us every week what book he read, and board members talk about reading on a regular basis. So I thank you very much, and see you soon.
Thank you, Mr. Tokovsky. Diana Guillen. Diana Guillen.
Buenas noches, miembros del board. Mi nombre es Diana Guillén y he sido presidenta del comité DILAC por los últimos 4 años.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Diana Guillen, and I have been the DLAC chairperson for the last 4 years.
Estamos mirando en las escuelas que es tiempo del presupuesto.
We're seeing that at schools that it's time for the budget.
Y desde el primer año que yo fui presidenta, quisimos hacer una campaña de transparencia en las escuelas.
And since the first year I was the chairperson, we wanted to do a school campaign for transparency.
Y hicimos una encuesta donde preguntamos a los padres cuánto sabían del presupuesto.
And we try to survey parents to see how many of them knew about the budget.
Pero no estamos calificando a los padres, sino a los directores.
But we're not rating parents, but we are rating the principals.
Porque lo que saben los padres es simplemente lo que les dan los directores.
Because what parents know is simply what principals tell them.
Y supuestamente el señor Antonio Plasencia de ahí empezó a entrenar directores y a decir que fueran más transparentes y que hicieran las cosas diferentes.
And from there, Mr. Antonio Plasencia said that they were going to train principals and that things were going to be more transparent and be different.
Entonces empezó a hacer entrenamientos del dashboard.
And then they started doing trainings on the dashboard.
Y digo, eso está bien para las personas del público.
And that is okay for members of the public.
Pero para los padres que son miembros de un comité y que necesitan tomar decisiones, eso no funciona.
But for committee members who are part of a committee, that doesn't work.
Y lo máximo que hacen es darnos una hojita como esta.
And what they mostly do is give us a page just like this one.
En un comité de ILA, todo en inglés,
In an ELA committee, everything in English,
aunque el director habla español.
even when the principal speaks Spanish.
Y yo como padre tengo que saber qué significa 10-947, 10-948, 10-949, 10-947, 10 y todas estas siglas que ustedes tienen.
And I, as a parent, need to know what is 10-949, 10-948, 10-949, 10-947, and all these acronyms that are used.
Entonces, realmente el señor Plasencia está ayudando para que los padres podamos ejercer nuestro papel en los comités.
So is Mr. Plasencia really supporting us parents playing a role in the committees?
Y quiero decirles que esta hoja me la dio en unas escuelas que ustedes han reconocido aquí. Tal vez no el día de hoy, pero ha venido aquí al board.
And just to let you know, this is from a school that has presented here at the board, maybe not today, but has been at the board.
Y es preocupante, ¿verdad?, cómo las escuelas no tienen participación de padres.
It's concerning how schools do not have parent engagement.
Quieren que nosotros vengamos y decirles y hablar de las cosas académicas,
And they want us to come and talk about academic issues,
que van a cambiar la manera en que los estudiantes ven la educación.
to change the way that students see their education.
Pero mientras esto siga pasando, eso no va a poder cambiar.
But while this is happening, that will never change.
Porque los padres, cuando un director presenta este tipo de datos, nos hace sentir estúpidos.
Because when principals present this type of information to parents, we feel stupid.
Porque pensamos que somos tontos y que no tenemos que estar ahí en algo tan difícil de entender.
Because we feel that we are dumb because we don't get something that is supposed to be so easy to understand.
Cuando yo he explicado la mejor manera fácil de hacerlo y de entenderlo para los padres.
When I have explained an easy way for parents to understand.
Entonces, ¿cómo es que vamos a abordar los problemas de seguridad de la escuela?
So how is it that we're going to address safety
¿Cómo
issues?
vamos a abordar los problemas de reclasificar a los estudiantes?
How are we going to address issues of reclassification?
Si toda la información que dan la dan de una manera que no se entiende.
Because they always give the information in a way that is not understandable.
Hoy tuve una reunión en el comité de DILAC
Today I had a DLAC committee meeting,
y un padre trató de hacer una moción.
and a parent tried to do a motion.
Entonces la señora Díaz, que es una de las administradoras, no entendía lo que el padre quería decir y en vez de ayudarlo, le preguntó 4 o 5 veces. Entonces eso hace que uno se intimide cuando un padre es nuevo.
And Ms. Diaz asked the parent 4 to 5 times what the motion was about, and that discourages parents.
No dejan que los padres nos expresemos y digamos las cosas como queremos. Ellos quieren entenderlo todo cuando en realidad es cosa que el comité tiene que hacer.
They don't let parents express themselves the way they want to, just as they want to, and let the committee do what they want to do.
Otro punto es que la policía escolar es muy importante para los padres.
Another issue is that school police is very important to parents.
Tal vez no para un sector de UTLA que lo que quiere es tener más números.
And maybe not for a UTLA because what they want is more numbers.
Porque realmente el director de las escuelas, para poder tener seguridad en la escuela, a la hora de los patios sacan a todo el personal para que cuide a los estudiantes.
Because when principals really want safety, what they do is they take out all the students out so that they can all supervise.
Sale el coordinador, sale el PSA, sale todo el personal de administrativo tiene que salir y dejar sus funciones.
Because all the administrative personnel, just like the coordinator and the PSA, needs to come and leave their duties behind.
Lo único que estamos de acuerdo es que no se debe de a los estudiantes no se les debe criminalizar.
What we're in agreement is that students cannot be criminalized.
Tenemos que buscar una manera de trabajar con la policía escolar.
We need to find a way to work with school police.
Pero las personas que vienen aquí no son padres. Las personas que quieren que se quite la policía no son padres, no tienen hijos en las escuelas y no viven en nuestro vecindario.
Those that come here that don't want the police are not parents and are not those that live in our neighborhoods.
Y queremos que ustedes escuchen a nosotros, no a estas personas que tienen intereses políticos.
And we want you to listen
Gracias.
to us and not these people who have political interest.
Thank you. Mr. Juan Mangandi.
Buenas tardes.
Good evening.
Fíjense que este día dije yo, por primera vez voy a defender a un superintendente,
See, here I came today because I'm going to finally defend a superintendent.
porque yo sé que ya lo quieren echar. Porque está siendo medio rebelde con ustedes, ¿verdad? Y los sindicatos, el superintendente.
Because the superintendent is being a little rebellious with you and the unions.
Porque no es como el que se fue, ¿va? Que era un administrador que solo vino a agarrar su dinero y se marchó.
Because it's not just the administrator like the previous one that just came for the money
Quizás
and
este
left.
superintendente tiene algo que perder. Quizás tiene
Maybe-
algo de decencia, voy a decir yo.
Maybe this superintendent has something to use, maybe a little bit of decency.
Y esto traigo, ¿por qué traigo esto a cuenta?
And why do I say this?
Porque aquí se vienen a contar unas historias maravillosas de las escuelas.
Because here we hear fantastic stories from the schools.
Voy a hablar nada más de una, Yoka.
And I'm just going to talk about one, Yoka.
Me fui de mi vecindario por no mandar a mi hijo a la Yoka.
And I left my neighborhood for not to send my student to Yoka.
¿Saben cuántas niñas salen embarazadas de esa escuela?
You know how many pregnant girls come out of
¿Saben
that school?
cuántos niños usan drogas en esa escuela?
You know how many students use drugs in that school?
¿Saben cuántos niños de allí son reclutados para pandillas?
You know how many of them are recruited for gangs in
¿Saben
that school?
ustedes cuántos de esos niños no tienen rehabilitación y andan por el vecindario ahorita deambulando?
You know how many of them don't have rehabilitation and are in the neighborhood just walking
No,
around?
no lo saben y tampoco les interesa.
You don't know and you're not interested.
Porque a ustedes lo que les interesa es números,
Because what you're interested in is numbers.
maquillar números,
Just to kind of make up
maquillar
numbers.
estadísticas.
Just to mask
Y escuchan a personas que simplemente tienen intereses políticos o tienen intereses económicos.
And you only listen to those who have political or economic
Y
interests.
tienen una agenda contra aquellos que somos pobres,
And that have an agenda against those of us that are poor.
porque son hegemonistas, son clasistas y son discriminativos,
Because there's discriminating classes.
porque creen que el ser uno pobre, eso nos condena a nosotros a hacernos orgullosos que somos pobres.
Because if they think that when you're poor, you are proud to be poor.
Y ellos pueden presumir sus consignas
And they can go around
huecas y electoreras
saying their classifications
para decir que tienen interés de lo que es la justicia social.
so that they can say they are really interested in social justice.
Yo le pregunto al señor McKenna, ¿ya se dio cuenta a cuántas directoras han sido atacadas en su distrito?
And Mr.
¿Ya
McKenna,
se dio cuenta cuántos pleitos han habido en su distrito en algunas escuelas? Y le puedo dar nombres.
how many principals have been
A mí me
attacked
toca
and how
trabajar
many
allí.
conflicts you have in your school? We have to work on that.
¿Cuántas veces le he pedido audiencia como presidente y como padre para hablar sobre lo que es el tema de violencia y de drogas y de pandillas en el distrito? Nunca.
How many times have asked to have a meeting about violence in the district and we've never met?
Porque tal vez no soy de su clase o cree que yo no tengo los suficientes argumentos técnicos y académicos para entender su alto nivel académico que usted tiene.
Because maybe I'm not your class and don't have the vocabulary or the level that you require.
¿Cuántas veces hablé con Miss Baez sobre lo que es la calidad de la educación cuando fue superintendente?
And how many times I spoke to Ms. Bias about quality
¿Y
education?
cuáles eran las nuevas estrategias para elevar lo que es la calidad de nuestros niños de título 1?
And what are the new strategies to elevate our Title I students' education?
¿Cuántos líderes tienen? ¿Cuántos líderes? Yo quiero saber cuántos líderes tienen ustedes, ese montón de organizaciones que ustedes financian.
And how many leaders you have for all those organizations that you finance?
Que vengan a hacer propuestas aquí para mejorar la educación y la participación de padres.
To make proposals for improving student achievement and parent
No
engagement.
tienen ni siquiera, esta mano tiene mucho.
And this hand is way too many for that.
Y los directores manipulan y usan a los padres para venir a aplaudir aquí.
And principals manipulate parents so they can come and applaud here.
Pero luego les niegan la participación real de cómo es que los padres podemos dar nuestra experiencia y nuestros aportes para que nuestros niños puedan incrementar su aprovechamiento académico.
Then they're denied true input for giving experiences and input about how to improve education for their
Entonces,
children.
esta es una situación en donde ustedes no se han dado cuenta que están condenando a la miseria, a la pobreza y al retraso a nuestra comunidad latina.
Because you're not noticing that you're condemning our Latino population to poverty.
Porque los afroamericanos tienen que los defienden, tienen que hablar Lives Matter. Y los latinos,
But African Americans have those that defend them. Black Lives Matter. But what about Latinos?
¿qué pasó con nuestro movimiento Latinos Lives Matter too?
What happened with our movement?
O sea, ¿la vida de los latinos no
Lives
cuenta?
Matter too, or don't they count as well?
No, porque somos de este colorcito, o porque somos chaparritos,
Or because we're this color, or
o, porque
because we're
somos,
short,
o quizás somos tontitos.
or because maybe we're dumb.
Entonces, ¿qué es lo que vamos a hacer de verdad? Cada vez estamos llegando a un extremo en donde nuestros niños ahorita están consumiendo marihuana desde los 12 años.
Maybe we're getting to the point where our students are consuming
Y esas
marijuana at 12 years
organizaciones que
old.
ustedes apoyan creen que la marihuana es un símbolo de paz
And
y,
those that you support, organizations think that marijuana symbol is
y
peace
que no afecta lo que es el desarrollo de lo que es el cerebro de los niños a edad temprana.
and does not affect early child brain development.
Ustedes saben cómo los vecindarios ahorita en este momento se ha destapado. Hay venta de marihuana libre. Parece ser que hoy hay, como dicen, es la hora del marihuano feliz.
And it's like open season for marijuana sales. It's happy times for those that use marijuana.
Ok, en todo esto, ¿cuál es la responsabilidad?
And in all this, what is your responsibility?
¿Ustedes van a salir de este puesto?
Will you leave your post?
¿Van a ir a retirarse? ¿Van a ir a un crucero? ¿Van a ir? No sé a dónde van a ir.
You will
Ustedes,
retire, go on a cruise. I don't know.
ustedes son una gente privilegiada.
You are the privileged one.
Y nuestros niños van a desertarse de las escuelas, no van a poder competir con otros niños de mejores económicas en los colegios o en las universidades.
Because our students will leave the schools because they're not competitive enough for other students that
Y
have
no
the
creo
means
que
for
ustedes
university.
se acuerden de ellos.
And I don't think you'll remember them.
Pero nosotros, los padres de esos niños,
But we, the parents of those
tenemos
children,
el deber de luchar y decirles a ustedes que ustedes están siendo irresponsables
have the duty to fight for our
con
children
una
and
generación de gente que el único pecado que tiene es ser pobre y a veces no haber nacido en este país.
tell you
Gracias.
that you're responsible and that their only sin is being born poor, but we have to tell you this.
Okay, Antonieta Garcia, I see that you signed up online, but I don't have you as having called in. You're not on our call-in list right now. Carla Franco, I believe you're here in person. Carla Franco.
Buenas noches. Voy a tratar de ser lo más suavecita que pueda.
Good evening. I'll try to be as soft as possible.
Realmente quiero preguntar qué tan serio toman las preocupaciones y las quejas de los padres.
I just want to ask, how serious do you take the concerns from parents?
Porque en el 2015 me hicieron acoso sexual
Because in 2015, I was sexually assaulted
en Barack Obama Middle School.
at Barack Obama Middle School.
Hice el reporte en el distrito.
I made the report at the district.
No se sorprenda, señor McCanna,
And please don't be surprised, Mr. McKenna,
porque yo le hablé a usted porque me dijeron que en ese tiempo a usted le correspondía esa escuela.
because I called you because at that time they told me that
¿Y
was
sabe
your
qué me
school.
dijo usted, señor?
And you know what you told me?
Good luck.
Good luck.
Perdón,
I'm so sorry.
pero tengo los registros.
I have the
Okay.
records for it.
Y créeme que para mí no es fácil recordar eso.
And believe me, not easy
Okay.
for me to remember.
Tengo los reportes.
I have the reports.
Y usted no lo tomó con seriedad.
And you
Usted lo único que dijo, buena suerte.
And you did not take
Y
it
me he quedado
seriously.
callada de que no hice escándalo porque mi marido no me apoya en andar en esto. Él no entiende que yo estoy en las escuelas para apoyar la educación de mis hijos.
And
Y
I can-
usted no me creyó. Usted me dijo, buena suerte. Pero yo en cualquier momento puedo hacer el reporte a la policía y demandar al distrito y a usted. ¿Ok? Porque yo tengo todo eso. Pero volviendo a lo que vengo.
I will not shut this down, but I know
Nos quitaron
for
la
the
policía
support,
de los planteles escolares.
You took away the police from the schools,
Diciendo que porque los padres habíamos votado para que nos los quitaran.
saying that the parents voted so that they can take them away.
Nunca nos preguntaron.
We were never asked.
Ustedes escucharon a personas que ni siquiera tienen hijos en los planteles escolares.
You listen to people who don't have students in the
Que
schools,
solamente son organizaciones.
that are just organizations.
Y todo se les ha salido de control.
And everything now is out of control.
Todo el tiempo pasan peleas.
All the time there are fights.
Tengo todo, que gracias a Dios, cuando estaba Ref Rodríguez aquí,
And thankfully, when Ref Rodriguez was here,
hicimos una campaña.
we made a campaign.
If you know something, say something. Si sabes algo, di algo.
You know something, say something.
Y trabajamos mucho con esos estudiantes.
And we worked so much with those students.
¿Ok? Y hasta el día de hoy,
And until today,
tengo confianza con muchos estudiantes.
there are a lot of
Que
students
los
trust me.
directores quieren venir a mandar a personal para que digan que que tenemos planteles escolares los mejores, maravillosos, que vivimos en un castillo y que no pasan cosas horribles.
And they bring principals to say everything's fine, that we live in a beautiful castle and that everything is well.
Hay una pelea por semana, por día, en cada plantel escolar, en la Southgate Middle y en la Southgate High School.
At Southgate,
Al
there's,
extremo que hasta administradoras le jalan el pelo a los estudiantes.
at Southgate, there's a fight every single day, up to the point where administrators are pulling students' hair.
A esa administradora yo la vengo reportando por más de 3 años por su behavior que ella tiene.
I have been reporting that administrator for 3 years for her behavior.
El Distrito del Este nunca ha tomado con seriedad estos concerns.
These concerns were never taken seriously by Local District East.
Miss Muñoz le agarró coraje a mi hijo porque él fue testigo de cosas que ella hizo mal y hasta el juez le dijo a mi hijo que fuera a decirle al plantel escolar y al distrito la verdad. ¿Y sabes qué le dijo mi hijo al juez? No puedo. Y el juez le dijo, ¿por qué, hijo? Porque ellos se protegen entre ellos mismos. Y es verdad.
And Ms. Munoz had done a lot of things against my son and took it on. And even when the judge told my son to say the truth, the students said, no, I can't because they protect each other.
Antes de que pasara este incidente con esta empleada,
Before the incident with this employee,
ella intimidó a mi hija, la más pequeña, Yailin.
she intimidated my youngest one, Yailin.
A lo cual yo tuve que comunicarme de emergencia con la escuela. Yo estaba en una junta de DILAC cuando pasaron las cosas.
When things happened, I was at DLAC meeting and with emergency, they contacted me.
Y le pedí estrictamente al plantel que le dijera a Muñoz que no se le acercara a mi hija para nada, que ni siquiera me la volteara a ver. Mi hija no quería regresar al plantel escolar.
And I specifically told them, Ms. Munoz, not to even look at her because she was afraid.
Cuando esto sucede, a la semana después es cuando viene el incidente de las peleas y la señora Muñoz jala del pelo a la estudiante. Yo tengo los videos.
And the week after, a fight broke out and Ms. Munoz pulled a student's hair.
Yo me comuniqué con el Distrito del Este, que es el señor Huerta.
And I have the videos and I communicated with Mr. Huerta in Local District East.
Y Mr. Huerta, como siempre, hasta que no ve, como decimos en México, la cola entre las patas es cuando quiere tomar acción. Y es lo que hacen muchos de ustedes.
And just like Mr. Huerta, just like everybody, until they see the evidence, it's like they're with the tail between their legs.
Él fue al plantel escolar y el director le dijo que no había pasado nada, que había sido un incidente de que la decana le había jalado el pelo a la estudiante. Ahí no se ve que fue un accidente. Ella la agarra con coraje y se la lleva hacia la oficina. Y mi hija me dijo, Sima, ella la agarró del pelo y se la llevó a la oficina.
When he went to the school, Mr. Huerta, they said it didn't happen. And when they said about this hair pulling, it said that it wasn't done on purpose, but it was done on purpose.
Después de aquí del distrito me llamó una que se iba a encargar de la investigación. ¿Y sabe por qué no seguí con la investigación?
And then somebody in the district was in charge of the investigation. But you know why I did not continue with the investigation?
Porque se atrevió a decirme que si yo le creía a mi hija, aún teniendo yo las evidencias. ¿Sabe qué le dije yo?
Because she said, do you believe your daughter? Even though I had the evidence. And what did I say?
¿Sabe qué le dije?
What did I say?
Claro que le creo a mi hija.
Of course I believe my daughter.
Tengo las pruebas.
I have proof.
Le dije, ¿sabes por qué los estudiantes no quieren reportar las cosas?
I said, do you know why students won't report things?
Porque no les creen, y fue lo que mi hija me dijo. Ma, yo no quiero hablar con ella porque no nos creen. Ella te está poniendo las dudas. Están los videos, ma. Está toda la evidencia.
Because they are afraid and because they don't believe them. Even though we have evidence, we have videos.
Y es una desgracia que uno pierda la confianza de todos ustedes y que no tomen acción. Y lo que usted hizo, señor Macana, me ha marcado mi vida porque me he dado cuenta que han buscado la manera de pararme para no apoyar los planteles escolares. Para nada. Esas 3 personas siguen trabajando en las escuelas.
And it's a disgrace and there's no trust. And I have been marked by what has been done to me. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'm going to ask somebody to help me
We
to
just
have
were
somebody
talking
meet
about
with her.
that. We're going to do that right now.
Because that's, I have no idea what she was talking, I mean, I know some of what she's talking about, But when she points her finger at me and says, I told her good luck, that never happened. That's for the record, but I want to find out how I can help her.
Right.
So I need to have somebody who can speak Spanish
We've
well.
we've asked somebody
And
to
set
do
up a
that.
meeting with me, not today, but at a later time. I appreciate that, Madam Chair.
Yes, thank you.
I want to be of help.
Thank you very much, Dr. McKenna.
Okay, Marcela Garcia, I see you're on the line. Please press *6 to unmute yourself, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak once you begin. Marcela Garcia. Por favor, oprima estrellita 6 para hablar. Marcela Garcia.
Sí, buenas noches.
Good evening.
Mi nombre es Marcela García.
I'm Marcela Garcia. My kids are in this district, and I'm here as a parent. I get very frustrated because we don't know that the instruction or education that my daughter is receiving is the one that she needs to realize her potential academically, and that she has a condition that is very unique, and we're concerned about her study plans and those that my daughter needs. So we need resources as parents so that we can assist my daughter's learning and that of our children in general. Like reading, because we don't speak English. How can you be a bit more sensitive and proactive and have a parent involvement that is authentic and efficient in every school site? Why is it that you guys receive funds? It's because you receive funds thanks to special education, and you're supposed to make recommendations and decisions, supplemental funds, etc., for different programs. And it's enough to use our children to have personal gains. When we ask based on the results, nobody answers, and we become rejected people. And you call us problematic parents. I am in my children's schools to support them and to learn. But sometimes it feels like a waste of time, and no one is helping them. Pardon me. I am there in the school site to learn and to support, but also to demand that this time that is lost and can never be regained be valued. I hope that there is change, but more than anything for the English learners, because there's funds associated to them as well. And when we say that in this school, in my child's school, they don't receive the resources that they need in order to reclassify, who is monitoring this?
Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate your time. Maria Daisy Ortiz. Maria Daisy Ortiz. I see you're on the line. Please press *6 to unmute yourself, and you have 3 minutes to speak once you begin. Maria Daisy Ortiz, por favor.
Aló, buenas tardes.
Aló.
Hello, good evening. Can you hear me?
Sí, se escucha.
Good evening. I'm Maria Daisy Ortiz, and I'm a parent. I'm here because instruction is a fundamental base for our students to be able to realize their academic potential. And I want to thank everybody that was there today to give their presentations. but we have more than 1,300 schools. And if you see the results or the data associated to these schools and reading, 54% of the students in LAUSD, they are not reading at the level they are supposed to in 4th grade. So a lot of these programs that you're talking about, like Orton Willingham, yes, they give professional development to their teachers, but unfortunately, they do it in a way that is voluntary, and not all the teachers assist these things. So for this to be an efficient strategy, all the programs need to have an implementation team so that every region is responsible and monitors these programs, because we have these English learners, right? And there's almost 100,000 students that comprise this group. And ELD is something that someone needs to monitor. And who does that? Because when we have math and English, they are the ones that are falling behind. So we need to start not just to put programs in place so that the district looks pretty, but how do you assure that these programs are being implemented every day in class? How do you assist the teachers? How do you also give these strategies and workshops for development for the parents in the same way, so that they can learn English and so that they can support their children? The way you have the strategy for educators is the way you need to also implement it at home, or at least for us parents to do at home. Because if not, then we're not equitably at the table and part of this team, because then you don't love our children more than we do. We're their parents, and you are benefiting these unions and administrators and political parties, but our students don't necessarily benefit, and you receive the money and you don't want to accept responsibility. So it's time that a drastic change is made so parents can be the true voice and have power when it comes to decisions that involve funds and investments. And we need to be treated with justice, because our children deserve having their academic potential realized. So Mr. McKenna just said, when they graduate from high school, like he just said, we
Thank you
cannot
very
help
much
them.
for your time. We appreciate your time, Ms. Ortiz. Irene Morales, I see you're signed up, but that you did not call in, but I'm calling your name just so you know that you did sign up properly. Let's see, Maria Palma, I see you're on the line. Please press *6 to unmute yourself, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak once you begin. Maria Palma.
Yes, can you hear me?
We sure can. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Maria Luisa Palma. This evening, you've had a lot of presentations about instruction and that it should be appropriate for each child. A free, appropriate public education, equity. However, same does not apply to gifted students. And I ask you to watch your messaging. There is so much messaging at this district about English learners, about BSAP, about special education. But where do gifted students fall in all of this? Your policies, including Bulletin 269.10 and your reference document 5228.4, both clearly state that homeschooled students or privately educated students are not eligible to be tested for gifted status at the district. I recently spoke to a parent that was very interested, who was a parent of a pre-kindergarten student outside of the district, who is interested in having her child tested, but there is no method to have that happen here at the district. How is that equity? Do those parents not pay property taxes? Are they not eligible to have a free public education that is appropriate for the child's needs? So they are going to have to go to a private school. Do you know how much private schools cost for a gifted student? $40,000 a year, $45,000 a year? What about the $30,000 a year per student that this district has? Those parents don't have access to those funds. Where is the outreach to these parents and these families? You've said a lot about LA Unified wanting to be a school district of choice, but you also are not listening to the parents that want discipline, that want school police, that want safety in the school. I've observed at my son's high school, before school lets out, there are students wandering around in the hallways. I see them leaving the campus before school is out. The teachers I've talked to say, we can't stop them. If children want to get up and walk out, there is nothing teachers and administrators can do. How can that be? How can that be that there are no consequences, no discipline, and who is running the school? And parents are coming here and asking you to please return school police. I am in agreement with that. Please listen to the messaging that you put out and the messaging that the parents are here to tell you about what they need. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comments.
This concludes public comment.
All of you, and I hope you get home all safely before the rains start again. I think this has been a very interesting and exciting meeting, and I am looking forward to hearing back from Francis Bias, our Chief Academic Officer, about the issues that we raised in terms of the questions that we want to have some feedback on, in particular, how to expand the programs that we heard to other places. What does it take? Does it take money? Does it take, and if so, for what? The other thing that I think that we talked about also were the effects of preschool and early education. I think Ms. Board Member Tanya Ortiz had a couple of points. I lost my pieces of, here they are, right in front of me. But we'll give it in writing to our soon-to-be Dr. Baez so that she can, in future meetings, respond. Otherwise, I thank all of you very much for being here and for listening to all of this and for joining me, and I wish you all a very good evening.
We're done at 6:39 p.m.